Chapter 1600. On the head of this pitch-black giant beast, there was a pitch-black horn that emitted a sharp cold light. A pair of huge eyes, suffused with a strange red light, obviously had a bloodthirsty demonic nature. It stared at Ji Tianqing in the sky, slowly stretched out two huge front claws, and crawled out of the hole on the glacier ground. Ji Tianqing looked down at the pitch-black giant beast. Seeing its scarlet eyes and black gas lingering around its body, he guessed that it had been demonized. He could roughly guess that this giant beast at the second level of the crossing calamity realm was originally entrenched here, quietly waiting for the heavenly tribulation to descend. However, the two blood gods' clones occupied this area and subdued the giant beast. They used a secret technique to demonize the giant beast, turning it into a fierce demonic beast to protect their nest. With a burst of cracking sounds, the pitch-black giant beast drilled out of the ground and stood in the glacier valley. It was a pitch-black giant beast with a body length of 100 feet, with 6 legs. Its body was covered with cold hard scales, and there was a pair of wide black wings on its back. Ji Tianqing was temporarily unable to distinguish what race and bloodline this giant beast was. He only knew that the two blood gods' clones tamed this giant beast and named it Black Mountain. The two blood gods' clones stood on the ice mountain, looking at Ji Tianqing from afar, revealing a cruel and sinister sneer. "Kid, no matter what means you have, you will definitely die today. Enjoy the pain and fear. If you meet us, you will definitely die without a burial place, turning into ashes." Ji Tianqing ignored them, glanced at the giant beast Black Mountain in the valley, and slowly raised his right palm. A black light flashed in his palm, and a pitch-black ancient broken sword appeared. It was the sword of burial of heaven. He opened the sword world and whispered, "Ji Bai, I let you rest in the sword world for so long, you must be bored, right?" As his voice fell, a light flashed in the sky in front of him. Swoosh! A figure wearing a black robe and holding a strange black blade appeared out of thin air in the sky. He was Ji Bai. When Ji Tianqing left Mount God Bestowment, he had brought him with him. In order to facilitate the operation and to keep it a secret, Ji Tianqing let him stay in the sword world to recuperate, and only called him out when needed. Now, he finally had a place to use his skills. Master's order is Ji Bai's duty. There is no such thing as boredom. Ji Bai bowed towards Ji Tianqing, his expression calm as he spoke. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and pointed at the giant beast Black Mountain in the canyon. "Ji Bai, I'll leave that giant beast to you. I'll personally deal with the two blood gods." Ji Bai glanced at the giant beast Heishan, not putting it in his eyes at all. When he saw the two blood gods on the ice mountain in the distance, he frowned and said coldly, "Two more demons? Master, please let me deal with them." He had helped Ji Tianqing kill a blood god before, so he knew how difficult and terrifying it was. In comparison, the giant beast Black Mountain was not much of a threat. Therefore, he had to take the initiative to deal with the two blood gods to prevent Ji Tianqing from being in danger. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said solemnly, "The blood gods are not easy to deal with. Only I can restrain them. You just have to follow my orders." After saying that, his figure flashed and flew across the sky, rushing towards the two blood gods on the ice mountain. He had just flown 3,000 meters away when the giant Black Mountain in the canyon roared and rushed into the sky, pouncing towards him. Seeing this, Ji Bai did not hesitate to take out his black blade. Swish swish swish, he slashed out dozens of bright blade lights, blocking the giant beast Black Mountain. The powerful blazing white blade light fiercely slashed the giant beast Black Mountain, causing it to fly back and smash into the canyon. With a loud boom, a huge pit was formed on the canyon floor, splashing dust and ice into the air. The giant beast Black Mountain had just climbed out of the pit when Ji Bai rushed over and slashed with his blade as fast as lightning. Swish swish swish. One after another, huge blade lights lit up, like white silk across the sky, covering the sky. The giant beast Black Mountain was blocked by the blade lights and could not rush out. It could only give up on chasing Ji Tianqing and attack with all its strength, fighting with Ji Bai in the canyon. At the same time, Ji Tianqing rushed to the top of the ice mountain, only 1,000 feet away from the two blood gods. His momentum rose to the peak. Using all of his strength, he waved the burial of heaven and launched an attack. Broken Moon Sword. Against the blood gods in the second layer of the tribulation realm, ordinary secret techniques were useless. As soon as he attacked, he used all of his strength and used his strongest killing move. The burial of heaven slashed out 1,000 feet long dark golden sword, with the power to destroy everything, slashing towards the two blood gods. The two blood gods' illusions frowned, and their eyes became serious. Damn it, this kid also has helpers. This little bastard only has the strength of the primordial soul realm. How can he use such a powerful sword technique? As they spoke, the two of them spread out tacitly and teleported into the sky. The giant golden sword struck Qinggong with a loud bang. Boom! Qinggong was injured by Ji Tianqing before, and 30% of its strength was devoured by the heaven-mending orb. Its reaction was a little slow, so it was hit by the golden sword, and its entire left arm was cut off. Ji Tianqing was about to release the power of the heaven-mending orb to purify the left arm condensed by the blood light. But at this moment, Frost Knight, who had dodged the attack, rushed over from the right. Kid, die! Frost Knight shouted angrily, holding a giant axe condensed by demonic chi in both hands, and slashed down fiercely. Ji Tianqing did not dare to be negligent, and could only wave his sword to block the attack of the giant axe. Ask the heavens with the horizontal sword. The Heaven Barrier sword released a dazzling golden sword, which blocked the sky above his head. The pitch-black heaven-splitting axe fiercely slammed into the huge golden sword, causing a loud boom sound to ring out. The golden sword shattered on the spot, and Ji Tianqing was also sent flying, crashing into the valley below. Frost Knight was not injured at all, and with both hands holding the giant axe, it chased after him with murderous intent, and slashed again. Ji Tianqing hurriedly took out the Kenshin battle robe, condensing a pair of golden wings to protect himself. Bam! The giant axe hit him again, but it was blocked by the golden wings. Amidst the deafening noise, he crashed into the valley, creating a huge crater in the glacier ground, and snow and gravel splashed everywhere. When he crawled out of the crater, Qinggong had also reattached its broken arm, and joined forces with Frost Knight to attack him. Ji Tianqing had no choice but to take out the golden sword, and use his secret technique to fight fiercely with the two blood gods. The two sides fought fiercely in the sky, and both used all their strength, using all kinds of powerful ultimate skills. Deafening collisions and explosions continued to ring out, echoing through the mountains and the sky. Chapter 1601. Soon, a quarter of an hour had passed. Ji Bai and the giant beast Heishan had already fought for thousands of moves in the canyon. Both of them had the strength of the second layer of the crossing calamity realm. The power of the spells they cast was extremely powerful, and the destructive power was astonishing. The glacier canyon with a radius of 100 miles was destroyed by their fierce battle. The ground was covered with numerous gullies and pits, and there were huge chunks of ice and gravel everywhere. The ice mountains around the canyon were also smashed into pieces by them, collapsing into a pile of rubble. Ji Bai's fighting strength was far beyond his realm. Especially his blade technique, it was godly, reaching the level of flowing light like lightning, extremely fast. The ravines and fissures on the ground were basically caused by his saber light. The giant beast Heishan's body was huge, but its strength was violent, and its defense was strong. But in front of Ji Bai, it was too cumbersome. Most of the time, it was passively beaten by Ji Bai, retreating step by step. Until now, it had already suffered thousands of blades. No matter how hard the scales on its body were, it could not block Ji Bai's lightning-fast blade. Its huge mountain-like body was covered with hideous wounds, deep to the bone, and blood was flowing. There were also 2 huge wounds that almost cut off its neck. 2 of its 6 legs were also cut off, and its injuries were extremely serious. However, such a heavy injury did not make it afraid. Instead, it aroused its ferocious nature. It fell into a berserk state, desperately counterattacking, releasing ice-blue flames that could destroy heaven and earth, wanting to burn Ji Bai into ashes. Ji Bai was as calm and collected as ever, without the slightest hint of anxiety. Other than his messy hair and some superficial wounds, he was fine, and his breathing was still stable. Seeing the giant beast Heishan spit out ice flames, his eyes flashed with a cold light. "Big Dipper, holy slash!" He shouted in a cold tone, and his figure suddenly became illusory, bursting with an extremely fierce aura. Swish, swish, swish. At that moment, his figure crazily split, and 36 shadows appeared in the air. Each shadow held a blade with both hands, and slashed at the giant beast Heishan. 36 rays of light that were as bright as stars, with terrifying power, appeared in the sky. In the next instant, when the overwhelming ice-blue flames descended, his figure disappeared. There were only 36 dazzling saber lights left in the sky. They broke through the ice-blue flames at the speed of light and hit the giant black mountain beast. Bang, 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 bang. A series of muffled explosions resounded through the clouds and shook the surrounding 300 miles. The giant black mountain beast's body, which was riddled with scars, was finally unable to bear the burden and was hacked into pieces by the saber light. Hundreds of pieces of flesh and blood splattered in all directions. The black blood that covered the sky and covered the earth was like a heavy downpour that sprinkled down from the sky. Only then did the 36 dazzling saber lights gather together and form a figure. This figure was Ji Bai. He stood in the sky, holding the black treasured saber in his hand, looking at the ravine that had already turned into ruins. Pieces of flesh and black blood were scattered all over the ruins, mixing with the rocks and ice. It was a ghastly sight. So, a ball of icy blue light rushed out of the ruins and fled in a panic. It was the primordial spirit of the giant black mountain beast. Ji Bai originally wanted to destroy its primordial spirit and kill it completely. However, he turned his head and looked at the distant sky. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was still fighting with the two blood gods' illusions, he suppressed the killing intent in his heart and turned around to fly towards Ji Tianqing. To him, killing a giant beast was nothing. It was far less important than protecting Ji Tianqing. After 2 breaths, he flew 100 miles away and arrived at Ji Tianqing's side. At this time, the battle between Ji Tianqing and the two blood gods' illusions had also come to an end. The two blood gods' illusions had turned into a 1,000 feet long blood-colored giant blade. They attacked Ji Tianqing from left and right. On the surface, it seemed that they were not injured and their attacks were very fierce. They seemed to have the upper hand. But in reality, their bodies had been destroyed more than 10 times and their strength had decreased by about 40%. At most, in 100 breaths of time, Ji Tianqing could destroy them and use the heaven-mending orb to devour them. After Ji Bai arrived, he quietly rushed to the vicinity of one of the blood blades. This blood blade was formed by Shuang Yi and it was slashing towards Ji Tianqing with all its strength. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Bai suddenly launched an attack. He swung his blade as fast as lightning. Fallen heaven continuous slash. Swish, 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 swish. In that instant, 9 snow-white blade lights appeared. Like lightning tearing through the sky, they ruthlessly slashed at Shuang Yi. But this was not the end. One after another, snow-white blade lights appeared. The power increased layer by layer, each blade faster than the previous one slashing towards Shuang Yi. Clang, 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 a series of collision sounds burst out. It was actually like the sound of metal clashing. The blood blade formed by Shuang Yi was continuously slashed 49 times in a short 2 breaths. After suffering such a heavy blow, it could no longer hold on and the blood blade collapsed on the spot. However, the blood fragments that covered the sky immediately condensed into a blood-colored giant, angrily staring at Ji Bai. Damn bastard, you dare to sneak attack me? You're courting death. Shuang Yi angrily cursed. He madly used a demonic path secret technique, releasing a sky full of blood light towards Ji Bai. Ji Bai hurriedly teleported to dodge and swung his blade to block Shuang Ye's attack. Both sides were entangled in the sky and engaged in an intense battle. Seeing this scene, Qinggong was filled with worry. He hurriedly attacked Ji Bai to help Shuang Yi. However, Ji Tianqing was already prepared and immediately used his ultimate move. White Tiger Sacred Sword. His body ignited with golden flames as his body fused with the golden primordial spirit sword. The Burial of Heaven sword also expanded to 1,000 feet tall and fused with the golden sword. Immediately, the golden primordial spirit sword's power increased by 4 times as it ruthlessly slashed towards Qinggong. Qinggong had a bad premonition and immediately wanted to teleport away. However, his vitality was already greatly damaged and his aura was locked by the golden sword. He was suppressed to the point that he could not move. How could he escape? Bang! With a muffled sound, he was slashed by the golden primordial spirit sword and shattered into pieces. Tens of thousands of blood fragments hurriedly retreated into the distance and quickly gathered together, wanting to reform his body. However, at this moment, the golden primordial spirit sword released a mysterious white light. Like a huge net that covered the sky, it covered the blood fragments. Swoosh! Countless blood fragments were enveloped by the mysterious white light. The white light contained a divine power that quickly purified the blood fragments and devoured them. In just a few breaths of time, all the blood fragments were devoured and disappeared without a trace. Blood god's son Qinggong was killed and turned into nourishment for the heaven-mending orb. The golden primordial spirit sword immediately turned around and flew towards Ji Bai and Shuang Yi. At this moment, Ji Bai and Shuang Yi were fighting in the sky dozens of miles away. Ji Bai's blade technique and strength were slightly better than Shuang Yi and had the upper hand. Chapter 1602. Ji Bai had long known the characteristics of the blood god's son, which was almost immortal. Therefore, he did not expect to be able to kill Frost Knight. He only wanted to entangle Frost Knight and weaken its strength as much as possible. When Ji Tianqing arrived at the battlefield, Frost Knight had just been forced back by Ji Bai's several sword lights. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing did not hesitate to attack. Vermilion Bird Sacred Sword. At this time, he maintained the state of fusion with the golden sword and Burial of Heaven. The 1,000 feet long golden sword ignited with bright golden flames, condensing into a mountain-like vermilion bird phantom. Its power was terrifying to the extreme. Boom! Frost Knight did not have time to dodge and was slashed by the golden sword. With a loud explosion, it was shattered into dozens of pieces on the spot by the giant sword. The dark red blood light fragments scattered in all directions, but they quickly gathered together. Ji Tianqing did not give it a chance to reform its body. Without hesitation, he scattered the sacred white light towards the blood light fragments. Swoosh! At least 30 blood light fragments were enveloped by the sacred white light. The demonic qi and evil power contained in the fragments were quickly purified by the white light. The remaining pure power was also quickly devoured by the heaven-mending orb. However, there were still dozens of blood light fragments that escaped the sacred white light. They had already gathered together to form a giant crimson sword that was over 100 feet in length. Swoosh! The blood light sword did not dare to stay. Without hesitation, it turned and flew away, escaping towards the ice mountain not far away. The ice mountain was at the end of the canyon, where Frost Knight and Qinggong's nest were. Previously, when Ji Bai fought with the Black Mountain giant beast, the aftermath of the battle was not able to destroy the ice mountain. After all, the ice mountain was protected by a powerful array. Don't even think about escaping. Seeing that Frost Knight still wanted to escape back to its nest, Ji Bai's tone was cold and angry. He waved his sword, creating a sky full of sword lights, blocking its front. Frost Knight had 70% of its power devoured by the heaven-mending orb, and was already exhausted. It was unable to dodge Ji Bai's sword light. Bang bang bang! A series of muffled sounds burst out, and it was once again cut into dozens of pieces, scattering in the sky. Before it could reform its body, Ji Tianqing had already arrived. Shwa! Another wave of holy white light shone down, enveloping all of the fragments. This time, Frost Knight had nowhere to run. The dozens of bloody light fragments were quickly purified by the holy white light and were quickly devoured. Seeing that the battle was over, Ji Bai heaved a sigh of relief. He was about to withdraw his saber and fly back to Ji Tianqing's side. But at this moment, a black shadow suddenly flew out from the ice mountain 100 miles away. Swish! The black shadow flew into the sky and immediately disappeared. In the next instant, when it appeared again, it was already behind Ji Bai, less than 300 meters away. The black shadow released a wave of black qi, which condensed into a millstone-sized palm, which silently slapped towards Ji Bai. Ji Bai suddenly realized that something was wrong. His face changed and the nerves in his body tensed up. A strong sense of danger made him feel as if there was a thorn in his back. He subconsciously teleported away, but it was already too late. Boom! With a muffled sound, he was hit by the mysterious black palm. He spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot and flew 10 miles away. At the same time, Ji Tianqing had just finished off Frost Knight and controlled the heaven-mending orb to finish devouring it. Swish! With a flash of brilliance, he removed the fusion state with the golden sword and returned to his original appearance. The Burial of Heaven sword also returned to its original state and was held in his hand. Only the 1,000-meter-tall primordial spirit golden sword was still floating in the sky behind him. He looked at the black shadow with a gloomy face and sized it up with a sharp gaze. He saw that a small figure was wrapped in a dense black qi. It was a 1-meter-tall child wearing pitch-black leather armor. His arms and legs were exposed to the air. At a glance, his skin was as dark as charcoal, and his body was covered with fine black hair. His face was also very ugly and ferocious, not like a normal person. He had a huge bald head with a dark red mysterious pattern engraved on it. It was a distorted face with 2 dark green eyeballs embedded in it. Under his collapsed nose was a large, flat mouth that resembled a toad's. His mouth could not close, revealing 2 sharp fangs, and black saliva continuously dripped from the corners of his mouth. Such an ugly and ferocious face was unforgettable. The most eye-catching thing was that his neck, arms, and legs were covered with evil spirit patterns. His 4 limbs were short and thick, and he had a ferocious appearance. His entire body emitted an icy aura of death. When Ji Tianqing saw his appearance, he frowned fiercely, and his eyes flickered with suspicion. This little monster doesn't look like a human at all. Is he a demon? But the demons on the profound sky continent don't look like that. They're all tall giants. Also, I've looked through the history books of the Shenwu continent, but I haven't seen any records of the demons. There are no demons on this continent. Just as he was feeling puzzled, the ugly child covered in ghostly tattoos opened his mouth and spoke. This is unbelievable. You damned worm, you actually chased me all the way here and killed 2 of my blood gods. The blood god scions were immortal and indestructible, so it was impossible for them to be completely killed. Little worm, what secret technique did you use to kill Qinggong and Shuangyi? The ghostly child spoke in the common language of the Shenwu continent. Ji Tianqing stared at him expressionlessly and asked, "Who are you? How are you related to the ancestral demon god? If you answer my question, I'll tell you the answer you want to know." The ghostly child sneered and looked at him playfully for a moment. Then, he said in a low voice, "There's no harm in telling you. I'm Ghost Child, one of the 36 demon monarchs. As for the ancestral demon god, he's the ancestor and leader of my clan." 36 demon monarchs? Ji Tianqing frowned and thought to himself, Ghost Child is stronger than Ji Bai. He's at least at the 3rd or 4th level of Tribulation Realm. The ancestral demon god has only escaped to the Shenwu continent for half a year, but he's already recruited 36 such powerful demon monarchs. He simply could not believe that the ancestral demon god had such powerful methods and abilities. Previously, he had been planning to take advantage of the fact that the ancestral demon god had yet to recover his strength to quickly find him and completely eliminate him. Now, it seemed that his plan was destined to fail, and it was impossible to realize it. However, Ghost Child's words had confirmed one thing. Ghost Child was indeed a demon, but he was not a demon from the profound sky continent. Instead, he was a demon from the Shenwu continent. Ji Tianqing did not understand why there were demons on the Shenwu continent, but why were there no records of them in the history books? However, now was not the time to consider this question. He had to think of a way to deal with Ghost Child. Little worm, it's time for you to answer my question. If you answer me truthfully, I may leave you with an intact corpse. Otherwise, you and your companions will become my dinner. Chapter 1603. Ghost Child's tone was cruel and bloodthirsty. His entire body was emitting an invisible pressure, quietly enveloping Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing secretly channeled his energy to resist the invasion of the demonic aura. On the surface, he casually replied, "To me, the blood god's sons are not immortal, they are just a little difficult to deal with. After all, I am the nemesis of the demonic race, even if it is the ancestor demon god, I can easily kill him." With these words, Ghost Child's expression suddenly changed. His dark green eyes emitted a strong murderous intent. You are Ji Tianqing? The guy who came here from the other continent?" Ghost Child's expression and tone were filled with shock. He obviously could not believe it. Ji Tianqing heard the knack and sneered, He, looks like you already know. After the ancestor demon god was defeated, he fled here in a sorry state." Ghost Child quickly woke up from his shock. His eyes emitted a bright brilliance, and he grinned. He. I can wear out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. I didn't expect you to be Ji Tianqing, you actually delivered yourself to my doorstep. As early as a few months ago, Lord Demon God issued an order for all the demon monarchs and blood god's sons to search for a human boy called Ji Tianqing. Whoever can capture you will be able to obtain the most generous reward, the ancient demonic inheritance. Ghost Child could not hold back the excitement in his heart. He raised his head and laughed loudly. Ha. This monarch's luck is really too good, you actually came uninvited, walking right into the trap. This monarch has decided to spare your little life. I will capture you and present you to Lord Demon God. Little brat, cripple your own martial arts and surrender without a fight. Don't make this monarch take action, you can't bear the consequences. At this time, Ji Bai had already channeled his energy to suppress his injuries, and flew from afar to Ji Tianqing's side. He stared at Ghost Child solemnly, and secretly transmitted his voice to Ji Tianqing, Master, this monster's strength is very strong, we are not his opponent, quickly retreat. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly to show that he understood. Of course we have to withdraw, but it's a little troublesome. Ji Bai said without hesitation, Master, don't worry. I will hold him back. You just need to run back. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said solemnly, No, we have to advance and retreat together. Only then will there be hope. After saying that, his entire body exploded with a soaring fighting spirit. Using all of his power, he controlled the primordial spirit golden sword to slash at Ghost Child. Soul Slayer. The 1,000-foot-long Yuan spirit golden sword exploded with destructive power. It tore through the dark sky and arrived in front of Ghost Child. Ghost Child's face was filled with disdain as he sneered, Little bastard, you're really stubborn. You're courting death. He shouted coldly as he waved his palms and unleashed a monstrous black gas that turned into 2 pitch-black demonic dragons that charged toward the primordial spirit golden sword. Bang bang. The 2 demonic dragons and the primordial spirit golden swords collided fiercely, causing 2 loud and muffled noises. The primordial spirit golden swords were sent flying on the spot. Golden light flashed wildly. The 2 demonic dragons were also scattered, but they quickly reformed and swooped down from the sky to attack Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's primordial spirit golden swords were shaken. His consciousness was blurred and his face was pale. Seeing the 2 demonic dragons coming down, he had no time to resist. At the critical moment, Bai stepped forward without hesitation. Holding the black saber in his hand, he rushed toward the two demonic dragons. 7 Slaughter Blade. He held the black saber with both hands and slashed out 700-meter-long saber lights in an instant, charging toward the two demonic dragons. In the next moment, the violent and fierce saber lights collided with the two pitch-black demonic dragons, causing an earth-shattering noise. Bang bang bang. The two demonic dragons were defeated on the spot, turning into overwhelming black gas that spread out in all directions. The 7 saber lights were also shattered, and Bai was sent flying again. Humph. Weak reptile, you dare to fight with me? Ghost Child snorted in disdain and once again slashed out 2 bloody lights. Swish swish. The 2 extremely dense blood-red lights condensed into 2 gigantic blood-red swords that were thousands of meters long, and slashed towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's breath was locked by the bloody giant swords. It was impossible for him to dodge. He did not dare to use the primordial spirit golden swords to resist. Otherwise, his primordial spirit would be seriously injured and would not be able to recover for several years. At the critical moment, he did not hesitate to close his golden wings to protect himself. Golden rock wings. Boom. In the deafening loud noise, the 2 bloody giant swords stabbed him, blasting him from the sky and smashing him into the iceberg ruins below. Boom. The ruins of ice and gravel were smashed into a huge deep pit, splashing dirt and stones all over the sky. Fortunately, the golden wings offset the power of the bloody giant swords. Ji Tianqing was not injured. But unfortunately, the power of the golden wings was exhausted. The golden light dimmed and automatically retracted into his body. Ghost Child chased after him again and flew above the deep pit. Before he could make a move, Ji Tianqing struck first, striking out with his left palm as fast as lightning. God-slaying spear. His left palm released a destructive golden divine flame, condensing into a golden divine spear that stabbed at Ghost Child. Ghost Child reacted quickly, instantly releasing a large bloody light that condensed into a wall in front of him. Heavenly Demon Blood Shield. The 30-zhang-wide wall of bloody light was like a huge and thick shield, firmly blocking in front of Ghost Child. Boom! The god-slaying spear wrapped in golden flames slammed into the Heavenly Demon Blood Shield, exploding with a thunderous sound. Ji Tianqing thought that this most powerful move would definitely be able to pierce through the blood shield and injure Ghost Child. But the result left him dumbfounded and in disbelief. The god-slaying spear and the Heavenly Demon Blood Shield exploded at the same time, shattering into pieces. Ghost Child's Heavenly Demon Blood Shield actually blocked the attack of the god-slaying spear. Ji Tianqing was filled with shock, but he had to accept the reality. The difference in strength between him and Ghost Child was too great, there was no hope for him to win. Kakik. Little worm, what other moves do you have? Use them all. Ghost Child stood in the sky, looking down at Ji Tianqing from above, and sneered with disdain. Ji Tianqing was unwilling, he stared at him with a gloomy face, silently accumulating his strength. At this time, Bai flew over from afar. Master, I'll take care of the rear, you retreat first. Bai shouted, holding the black treasured sword, he charged at Ghost Child without a care for his own safety. However, before he could attack, Ji Tianqing had already opened the third eye on his forehead. Lightning. Following his angry shout, endless purple lightning was released from the deep lightning god's eye, turning into a 20-foot-long divine lightning pillar that blasted towards Ghost Child. In that instant, the gloomy sky was illuminated by the purple light of the lightning, making it look dazzling. Between heaven and earth, there was an extremely violent and scorching aura. The divine lightning power dispelled the demonic aura and bloody light in the sky. Ghost Child's expression also changed, he narrowed his eyes, his gaze was very serious. Chapter 1604. Before the divine lightning pillar arrived, Ghost Child had already prepared his defense. He used a demonic path secret technique to form an oval-shaped blood shield to protect himself. It was still the demonic blood shield. The moment the blood shield formed, the divine lightning pillar fiercely struck him, enveloping him and the blood shield. Kaboom! A deafening sound of thunder burst out, resounding through the sky, shaking the mountains and the earth. In that moment, the demonic blood shield flashed with blood light, and countless cracks appeared. The divine lightning pillar also collapsed, turning into millions of purple lightning arcs, covering the sky within 100 miles. The demonic blood shield shattered. The dense purple lightning arcs enveloped Ghost Child, causing his body to tremble, and he let out an angry roar. At the same time, Ji Tianxing pulled the injured Ji Bai, and flew dozens of miles away as fast as lightning. Although the divine lightning pillar destroyed the demonic blood shield and achieved a certain effect, causing Ghost Child quite a bit of trouble. But Ji Tianxing knew that with just this divine lightning pillar, it was impossible to heavily injure Ghost Child. He had used up all his trump cards, but Ghost Child had not used his true trump card. If he did not take the opportunity to escape now, when would he? He took out a white talisman from his space ring, and activated it without hesitation. The talisman ignited with golden flames, and instantly turned into a ball of dense white light, emitting a powerful spatial energy fluctuation. In the universal treasure box that Hong Qing Tian gave him, there were more than 30 talismans with extraordinary effects. This white talisman was one of them, called the Great Shift Talisman. It could instantly shift 10,000 miles, it was very magical. In the next moment, the ball of dense white light spread out, and condensed into an oval-shaped door of light in the sky. Obviously, this was a teleportation door. Ji Tianxing brought Ji Bai, and stepped into the teleportation door of light. Whoosh! After the two stepped into the teleportation door, their figures disappeared in a flash, and the white door of light also disappeared into thin air. At the same time, the purple lightning arcs that covered 100 miles in the sky gradually faded. Ghost Child also broke through the blockade of the lightning arcs, and flew high into the sky. The surrounding lightning arcs became weaker and weaker, and could no longer pose a threat to him. Black smoke was rising from his body, and he was panting heavily. His head, neck, arms, and legs were all covered in charred scars, which were still bleeding profusely. They were all struck by divine lightning. Even though he had only suffered some minor injuries, it did not affect his ability to fight. However, the fact that he was in such a sorry state was a great humiliation to him. Damn Ji Tianxing! This monarch will tear you to shreds. He cursed angrily. His eyes flashed with a dark red light as he searched for Ji Tianxing. However, the surrounding sky was completely empty. Puzzled, he released his formless divine sense to cover an area of 500 miles, carefully inspecting every inch of the sky and earth. The result was the same. There was no one in the area. Where's Ji Tianxing and that bastard? Could it be that he had already escaped? This was impossible. In just a few breaths of time, with their strength, it's absolutely impossible for them to escape more than 500 miles away. Ghost Child furrowed his brows. He was filled with doubt and indignation. He then searched the area within 500 kilometers a few more times. Without a doubt, the results were all in vain. In the end, he had no choice but to accept reality. Ji Tianxing and Ji Bai had escaped from under his nose. Moreover, they had escaped in a baffling manner. No one knew. Originally, he was determined to capture Ji Tianxing. He would definitely be able to capture Ji Tianxing and offer him to the ancestral devil god for a reward. But now, the duck in his hand had flown away. He was so furious that he almost vomited blood. Thousands of miles away from Ghost Child, on top of an ice mountain. Swoosh! Suddenly, a white light flashed in the sky. Two tall figures appeared out of thin air. These two people were Ji Tianxing and Ji Bai. Ji Tianxing turned his head to look at the sky behind him. Seeing that the horizon was very calm, there was nothing unusual. Only then did he relax. Ji Bai remained vigilant at all times. He calmly looked around and asked, "Master, where is this?" Ji Tianxing subconsciously replied, "Of course we are still in the Arctic abyss. But we are thousands of miles away from Ghost Child. Don't worry, he definitely won't be able to find us. It's also impossible for him to chase after us." Ji Bai's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. After thinking for a while, he understood. "Master, you used the Great Shift Talisman? And, you know about it too?" Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows. Ji Bai calmly said, "Your subordinate's master can also refine the Great Shift Talisman. However, the time required to refine this talisman is too long and the materials used are too precious. Even if the talisman was refined, it would be gone after one use. Therefore, my master only refined a few and was usually reluctant to use them. I didn't expect that master would also have the Great Shift Talisman and use it so casually." Ji Tianxing was startled. He only smiled and did not say anything. But he secretly thought, "Elder Hong gave me so many treasures, pills and talismans in the Qiankuan treasure box. This Great Shift Talisman is only one of them and it is already so precious. It seems that the gift that Elder Hong gave me is really a priceless treasure." After collecting his thoughts, he said to Ji Bai, "Ji Bai, we are already out of danger. I have to rush back to the Glacier God Mine and take care of some things. You are also injured. Go back to the Sword World to heal." After saying that, he opened the entrance to the Sword World. "Master, please take care. If you need anything, just give the order." Ji Bai cupped his hands and bowed to him before entering the Sword World. After Ji Tianxing put away the Burial of Heaven sword, he quickly flew across the sky and returned to the Glacier God Mine. On the way back, he silently thought, the tragedy in the Glacier God Mine was caused by 2 blood god sons. Now that I have killed 2 blood god sons, there shouldn't be any more problems in the future. Although Ghost Child is also a demon, he is not a blood god son. It is impossible for him to go to the mine and create a tragedy to increase his strength. The truth of the tragedy had been found and the culprit had been dealt with. There was no point in him continuing to stay in the Glacier God Mine. It would only be a waste of time. Calculating the time, it is almost time for the God Light to descend. I have to quickly return to Sealed God Mountain and wait for the God Light to descend. After a few hours, Ji Tianxing returned to the Glacier God Mine. He did not sneak into the northern mining area. Instead, he concealed himself and found his way to the entrance of the God Mine. He hid outside the defensive array and secretly observed for a while. After the patrolling guards left, he took out the unconscious Kulan from the Sword World and threw her near the defensive array. Not long after, another group of patrolling guards passed by and found the unconscious Kulan. Everyone went forward to check on the situation and quickly brought Kulan into the God Mine. Ji Tianxing hid in the dark. After seeing this scene, he felt relieved and turned to leave. Previously, he acted in the God Mine using Kulan's identity. Now that he was leaving, of course he had to send Kulan back. Chapter 1605. After leaving the Glacier God Mine, Ji Tianxing rode on his sword and sped through the sky. His return journey was quite smooth, and there were no mishaps along the way. Even if there were some giant beasts hiding in the Arctic abyss that attacked him when he passed by, he was able to avoid them. After leaving the Arctic abyss, there was no more danger. As he hurried back, he thought about his future plans. He had originally planned to investigate the whereabouts of the Blood God and the Primordial Demon God through the tragedy in the Glacier God Mine. If he could find the Primordial Demon God, he would kill him at all costs. However, he had not expected that the Shinwu continent would also have such a powerful demon force. The 2 blood gods that he had killed were only small fries under the Primordial Demon God. The true powerhouses and main forces were the 36 demon sovereigns, including Ghost Child. With his current strength, he could not even defeat Ghost Child, let alone kill the Primordial Demon God. This plan could only be put aside for the time being, and he would consider it again when he was stronger. Thus, he could only leave the Glacier God Mine and return to Mount God Seal as soon as possible. What he needed to do next was to increase his strength as soon as possible. He needed to prepare for the God-disciple test in 10 days and prepare for the 3 divine kingdoms exchange. After he met Yun Yao and reunited with Yun Yao, he would consider other matters. Unknowingly, 6 days passed. On the night of the 6th day, he returned to Mount God Seal covered in dust. Fortunately, he had returned in time. Tomorrow was the day when the divine light would descend. Ji Tianxing quietly returned to Mount God Seal without alerting anyone else. When he returned to the eastern courtyard of Heaven's Saint Palace, it was already late at night, and everything was silent. He was mentally exhausted. After entering the secret room, he took a pill and sat down to meditate. The night passed quickly. By daybreak, his magic power had mostly recovered, and his mental state was much better. When the sun rose, he ended his cultivation. After changing into a clean set of clothes, he left the secret room and rushed to the sacred altar in the middle of Heaven's Saint Palace. Half an hour later, he arrived at the sacred altar. It had been 3 months since he had last come to the sacred altar. The sacred altar looked the same as before, and it had not changed at all. The warm morning sun shone on the sacred altar, causing it to shine with a dazzling golden light. Around the holy altar, there were more than 30 statues of mythical beasts. They formed a circle around the holy altar as if they were guards. He stepped onto the giant stone steps and climbed to the top of the altar. Not long after, he crossed the 99 steps and arrived at the top of the holy altar. On the 10-zhang-wide platform, the ground was dark gold in color and carved with mysterious patterns. 2 divine dragons were circling around it. He sat on the ground with a calm expression, closed his eyes, and meditated, waiting patiently. Today was the day when the divine light descended. However, it was only a possibility. It might not really happen. He didn't have much hope. Not long after, light footsteps could be heard from below the altar. Ji Tianxing heard the sound and guessed the identity of the person. He opened his eyes and looked down. Sure enough, as he expected, a white-haired old man in a white robe had just walked to the bottom of the holy altar and was looking up at him. Elder Hong. He smiled and greeted the white-haired old man. The white-haired old man was Hong Qingtian. He also looked at Ji Tianxing with a smile and nodded slightly. I'm here to take a look. You are still so early. Ji Tianxing smiled and said, Elder Hong, come up and talk. No need. Hong Qingtian shook his head and said, my injuries have already healed, and my strength is slowly recovering. There's no need to devour the divine light anymore. You can continue with your cultivation. I'll just watch from here. Ji Tianxing didn't insist. He asked with concern, Elder Hong, have you collected enough outer space Xian Bing and Earth Core Fire Crystal? Hong Qingtian raised his eyebrows and said with a bitter smile, these 2 materials are precious treasures that can only be found by chance. How can it be gathered so quickly? However, don't worry. I predict that I'll be able to collect them before you participate in the kingdom exchange. Ji Tianxing was stunned. He smiled and said, Elder Hong, are you so sure that I can participate in the kingdom exchange? Hong Qingtian stroked his beard and said with a benevolent smile, of course. Disciples who can obtain the top 5 in the God Disciple Assessment are qualified to participate in the exchange. 3 months ago, you've already defeated the 4th-ranked genius, and you're ranked 4th. Now that 3 months have passed, your strength is even stronger than before. You'll definitely be ranked in the top 3. Ji Tianxing didn't try to be modest. He just smiled and nodded. He was the Son of God. No matter what kind of miracle he created, it wasn't rare. If he was modest on purpose, it would seem hypocritical. After a moment of silence, Hong Qingtian stopped smiling and said earnestly, actually, what I'm looking forward to the most is that you can obtain the 1st place in the assessment and become the number 1 genius. Only then will you be worthy of the identity of the Son of God and become the most valued God disciple of the Clear Sky Pagoda. At that time, not only will you be able to comprehend the Divine Master's secret technique, you'll also receive the most generous reward. Ji Tianqing also knew that Mount God would recruit a batch of God disciples every 20 years. Most of them would be mediocre even if they became God disciples. Only the number one God disciple had the most potential and could achieve great things in the future. He nodded calmly and said with a smile, "Since Elder Hong has such high expectations of me, how can I let you down? 10 days later, I'll come back with the first place." Hong Qingtian was stunned for a moment, then he revealed a gratified smile. "Hee hee. You're really confident, but I'll support you." The two of them chatted and laughed. After an hour, the originally calm sky suddenly surged with wind and clouds. In the distant sky, a sea of white clouds was blown away by an invisible hurricane and rolled into a huge whirlpool. It was a whirlpool with a radius of 10,000 miles, facing Mount God. Around the whirlpool, the sky became dark. Even the golden sun became dim. The sudden change stunned Hong Qingtian for a moment, and then he revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. He stroked his white beard and said with a gratified face, "Tianqing, your time has come. The divine light is about to descend. You have to concentrate on refining the divine light without any distractions. I'll protect you." Ji Tianqing looked up at the sky. When he saw the changes in the sky, he revealed a look of anticipation. "Great! The divine light has finally descended. If I can refine the divine light before the God disciple assessment, my strength will definitely rise to another level." After muttering to himself, he quickly sat cross-legged on the holy altar. He put his palms together in front of his chest and silently cultivated. The changes in the sky lasted for 100 breaths before finally stabilizing. Then, the huge whirlpool formed by the wind and clouds lit up with a dazzling 7-colored brilliance. It poured down like a flood. Chapter 1606. The mighty rainbow divine light poured down like a waterfall from the 9 heavens. In that instant, the entire sky above God's Seal Mountain was enveloped by the rainbow divine light, making it dazzling and brilliant. The divine light contained boundless spirit chi as it descended from the sky, heading straight for the holy altar in the middle of Heaven's Saint Palace. Ji Tianqing sat unmoving at the top of the holy altar, his eyes still closed as he calmly cultivated. He could clearly feel the boundless spiritual energy pouring down from the top of his head. The next moment, the first rainbow divine light descended on the holy altar, drowning his figure. Swoosh! Instantly, boundless rainbow-colored divine light descended one after another, enveloping him and the entire holy altar. He did not feel any discomfort, nor did he feel any pain. All the pores on his body naturally opened as if they were greedily breathing, trying their best to devour the rainbow divine light. That dazzling rainbow divine light was formed by the extremely rich 9 heavens spiritual liquid. It contained the purest dermic power, the richest spirit chi of heaven and earth, and some mysterious power. That mysterious power could not only temper his body, but also rapidly strengthen his essence spirit. He guessed that this mysterious power was probably unique to the divine nations. Not long after, the rainbow divine light in the sky dissipated. The vortex with a radius of 10,000 miles also gradually collapsed, and the sky returned to its calm state. The divine light that descended from the 9 heavens all gathered at the holy altar, surging like a tidal wave, but it did not dissipate. Ji Tianqing was submerged in the rainbow divine light, and he could only focus on devouring the divine light with all his might, refining it for his own use. Hong Qingtian stood below the holy altar, looking at the surging divine light. He smiled and stroked his beard, his voice filled with gratification. The winds and clouds of the 9 heavens change drastically, and once they meet the divine light, they transform into dragons. Tianqing's luck is extremely good. The 9 heavens divine light that he attracted this time is actually so vast and mighty. The divine light that I receive every year is not even half of this. Looks like his strength has increased explosively this time. Hong Qingtian's tone was somewhat emotional and envious. But he only felt gratified and expectant, happy for Ji Tianqing. Although he was not related to Ji Tianqing, his relationship with Ji Tianqing was even if it was not that of a master and disciple. He was happy that Ji Tianqing could benefit from it. He was also gratified that Ji Tianqing could create miracles and honor. If he could help Ji Tianqing, he would help. If there was something he could teach Ji Tianqing, he would not hold back and teach him everything he knew. To be honest, he and Ji Tianqing were more like good friends despite their age difference. At the same time, many people on Mount God Bestowment were alarmed by the changes in the sky and the seven-colored divine light. The descent of the rainbow-colored divine light brought with it vast and mighty spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Faint five-colored spiritual qi fell from the sky and enveloped the entire Mount God Bestowment. Whether it was the guards, the maids, or the 50 young geniuses, all of them could clearly feel that the spiritual qi of heaven and earth had increased by several times. Many people revealed looks of shock as they looked in the direction of the Heaven Saint Palace. Everyone could clearly see that the resplendent Heaven Saint Palace was shrouded in a seven-colored radiance, looking extremely dazzling. Without a doubt, the divine light descending from the 9 heavens had landed in the Heaven Saint Palace. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth that everyone absorbed was only a drop in the ocean of the divine light. The majority of the divine light was within the Heaven Saint Palace. Thinking of this, everyone's hearts were filled with envy and jealousy. Especially the young geniuses of various countries, their emotions were even more complicated. Many thoughts flashed through their minds. The divine light has descended upon the Heaven Saint Palace. That is the place with the densest spiritual qi. Ji Tianqing is staying in the Heaven Saint Palace. He will definitely be able to devour a large amount of divine light and increase his strength greatly. Damn it. He doesn't cultivate as hard as we do, and he has to go through fewer hardships than we do, but he can reap the greatest benefits. It's really infuriating to compare oneself to others. The top geniuses will obtain the most cultivation resources and increase their strength the fastest. The gap between them and us will also quickly widen. I wonder what realm Ji Tianqing's strength will reach after he devours all that divine light. Will he be able to enter the top 3 in the God-Disciple test in 10 days? Many geniuses pondered with complicated emotions for a moment before regaining their composure and continuing their cultivation. The guards and maids gathered in groups of 3 to 5. After discussing for an hour, they dispersed one after another. Within the Heaven Saint Palace, the seven-colored divine light enveloping the holy altar lasted for an entire day. Only when night fell did the dazzling seven-colored divine light disappear. All the divine light had been devoured. Of course, the energy contained within the divine light was too vast. With Ji Tianqing's strength, it was impossible for him to devour all of it. He had devoured about 50%, the burial of heaven had devoured 30%, and the heaven-mending pearl had devoured 20%. Even so, he could not refine the 50% of divine light he had devoured in a short period of time. He could only store the divine light in his body first and slowly refine and absorb it in the future to gradually increase his strength. When the divine light dissipated and the holy altar regained its calm, Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. A sharp light flashed across his eyes, and his body emitted an incomparably powerful and mysterious aura. Without a doubt, his strength had increased tremendously. Hong Qingtian stood below the holy altar for an entire day, guarding him to prevent any accidents from happening to him. Seeing that Ji Tianqing had ended his cultivation, he anxiously flew to the holy altar and landed beside Ji Tianqing. Tianqing, how did you finish devouring all the divine light in a day? Such a vast amount of divine light, and you are in such a hurry to devour it. It will cause harm to your body. As he spoke, Hong Qingtian looked at him with concern, checking his body's condition. Ji Tianqing smiled and shook his head. Elder Hong, don't worry. I am fine. I will store the divine light in my body for the time being and slowly refine it in the future. Seeing that he was fine, Hong Qingtian was slightly relieved. Suddenly, he realized that Ji Tianqing's strength realm had changed, and he immediately revealed a look of shock. You actually broke through to the 7th level essence spirit realm? Didn't you not completely refine the divine light? How did you break through so quickly? Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, perhaps it's because I am the son of Oracle, so the kingdom of God took special care of me, sending down such a vast amount of divine light. The divine light's effects are extraordinary, allowing me to reap such bountiful rewards. Hong Qingtian thought for a moment and found it reasonable. He said with a smile, "You are different from others. You will always create miracles and do all sorts of unbelievable things. All right, I won't take up any more of your time. Cultivation time is precious. Quickly go back and cultivate in seclusion. Refine the divine light as soon as possible." "All right, then I'll take my leave first," Ji Tianqing replied with a nod and bowed before leaving the holy altar. Chapter 1607. In the dark chamber, Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged on a jade futon. His eyes were closed, and his hands were placed on his knees as he circulated his energy to refine the divine light. Hazy multicolored light enveloped his entire body. It flowed slowly like water, flickering between light and darkness. As time passed, the divine light hidden in his body was gradually refined, turning into pure and majestic dermic powers that merged with his body. He had just broken through to the 7th level of the essence soul realm and could use the power of the divine light to consolidate his martial arts foundation and realm. The flow of time in the chamber was 5 times faster than the outside world. There were still 10 days before the God-disciple assessment. He could still cultivate in seclusion for another 50 days. He was confident that he could refine all the divine light in 50 days and increase his strength by 2 times. The next few days were very peaceful on the peak of Mount God Bestowment. It seemed peaceful on the surface, but in fact, a storm was brewing. The 50 young geniuses from the 6 nations were cultivating in seclusion day and night to increase their strength. In the previous ranking battle, 49 geniuses were eliminated and sent to the glacier divine mine to mine. This greatly stimulated them, igniting their fighting spirit and craziness. Everyone had a dream in their heart. Hidden within them was the ambition to become a martial arts expert. No one wanted to become a miner and die in a divine mine for the rest of their lives. Therefore, after the ranking battle ended, everyone cultivated crazily and spared no expense to achieve their goal. After all, there was not much difference in strength between the 4th and 6th levels of the essence soul realm. Moreover, in the previous trial in the mystic realm, everyone had gained a lot. In the past month, they had digested what they had gained and improved their strength rapidly. Unknowingly, 10 days passed. At this point, the geniuses from the various nations had been on Mount God Bestowment for exactly half a year. The time limit was up. The God Disciple assessment was finally here. The next morning, the geniuses from the various nations were ready when the first glimmer of light appeared in the sky. Many of them changed into clean and tidy clothes and wore luxurious jade crowns and hair accessories. They were dressed rather solemnly. Everyone stepped out of their palaces one after another. Facing the rising sun, they rushed to the square outside the temple. Along the way, the geniuses from the various nations met each other but did not greet each other. Everyone's expression was indifferent. Their gazes towards each other faintly contained a sense of scrutiny and vigilance. Not only between countries, but even when the geniuses of their own countries met, they were no longer as friendly and close as before. They became very distant and cold. After all, today's God-disciple assessment would decide everyone's fate. Everyone, no matter which empire they came from, had to fight for themselves. Apart from himself, everyone else could become his opponent. It didn't take long for the geniuses from various countries to arrive at the plaza outside the temple. They stood in the plaza and waited. Everyone was silent and did not gather together to discuss. Some people were quietly pondering, while others were secretly observing the other geniuses, checking on the progress of their strength. The atmosphere was heavy and stifling. Everyone felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on their hearts. At the same time, in the eastern courtyard of the Heaven Saint Palace, Ji Tianqing also ended his secluded cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. When he walked out of the secret room, the 2 golden armored guards who were guarding the door clearly felt that his temperament and aura were different from before. 10 days ago, when he entered the secret chamber to cultivate in seclusion, his body contained boundless divine light. His aura was vast and majestic, like a violent giant beast that struck fear in others. But now, he had become ordinary and plain. His aura was restrained and peaceful, just like a mortal. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that his eyes were dark and clear, as bright as the stars. His entire body had a noble aura that was one with heaven and earth. There was no doubt that he had refined all the divine light. Although his strength was still at the 7th level of the primordial soul realm, his martial foundation was solid, and his combat strength had more than doubled. He had already reached the peak of the 7th level of the primordial soul realm and was not far from the 8th level. Reporting to young Master Ji, the 3 guardians are waiting for you outside. A golden armored guard came forward, bowed respectfully, and reported the news. Ji Tianqing nodded and waved his hand, indicating for the golden armored guard to leave. Moments later, he walked to the entrance of the courtyard and saw Hong Qingtian standing under a big tree, waiting patiently. Elder Hong, why are you here? He revealed a gentle smile and greeted Hong Qingtian. Hong Qingtian sized him up with bright eyes before revealing a gratified smile. He said, "Today is the day of the God-disciple test. Of course, I have to watch it with you. Besides, I also want to see the results of your seclusion. It seems that you have refined the divine light and your strength has improved. You are not far from the 8th level of the primordial soul realm?" "Yes." Ji Tianqing nodded. Hong Qingtian walked side by side with him and left the east courtyard, rushing towards the temple square. On the way to the square, Hong Qingtian exhorted in a solemn tone, "Tianqing, with your strength at the 7th level of the primordial soul realm, it is certain that you will enter the top 3. But I have to remind you that you should act according to your strength when it comes to obtaining first place." "Oh? Why do you say so?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows, revealing a trace of doubt. Hong Qingtian explained, those 50 disciples were probably stimulated by the previous ranking battle. They have been cultivating crazily for the past month to improve their strength at all costs. They have all benefited from the training in the mystic realm. The results of this month's arduous cultivation are remarkable. Many of them have broken through their realms and their strength has increased tremendously. According to the Great Guardian, almost all of those disciples have reached the 5th level of the primordial soul realm. There are even more than a dozen disciples who have reached the 6th level of the primordial soul realm. The person who has improved the most is the number 1 genius, Qin Sanxiong. It is said that he has mastered the sky blade and his combat strength has increased by more than 5 times. Even the Great Guardian is shocked. "Tianqing, if you want to obtain first place, he is a formidable opponent." Ji Tianqing remained calm after hearing that. He chuckled and said, "It's okay. Even if my strength increases by 10 times, the result will not change, let alone 5 times. Hong Qingtian was stunned for a moment. He glanced at him with a strange gaze. Isn't this kid too confident? Qin Sanxiong is at the same realm as him. Furthermore, he has mastered the superior grade tribulation level Sky Blade. His combat strength must be extraordinary. Although Hong Qingtian thought so, he did not say anything else. Since Ji Tianqing was so confident, Hong Qingtian was also filled with anticipation. He wanted to see what methods Ji Tianqing had that made him look down on Qin Sanxiong. 15 minutes later, the two of them arrived at the square outside the temple. The 50 geniuses from the various countries were all present. They were scattered around the square. Seeing Ji Tianqing and Hong Qingtian arrive, everyone turned their heads and looked at Ji Tianqing, scrutinizing him. Chapter 1608. Ji Tianqing stepped into the plaza and found a random spot to stand. The geniuses of the various empires were secretly sizing him up, observing his cultivation level and changes. Among those complicated gazes, there were a few that were filled with hatred and killing intent. Ji Tianqing sensed that something was amiss and turned his head to look towards the southeast of the plaza. There were a few geniuses of the Chu Yun Empire standing there, including Yin Wuk. Yin Wuxia's expression was still calm, and his eyes were filled with kindness. However, Lan Yiqing, Kuang Long, and the others' eyes were filled with undisguised hatred and killing intent. Even though Ji Tianqing was looking at them, they did not avoid Ji Tianqing's gaze. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing was stunned. However, he immediately understood the reason, and his lips curled into a cold smile. Hee, looks like these fellows already know what happened in the Chu Yun Empire, and they're blaming me for it. However, he did not take the people of the Chu Yun Empire seriously, and he calmly retracted his gaze. Seeing his reaction, Lan Yiqing, Kuang Long, and the others became even angrier. The 5 of them gathered together and discussed telepathically. That damn Ji Tianqing, that despicable bastard, his crimes are unforgivable, and his death is not to be regretted. If he did not publicly offer the treasure to the Sage Emperor, how could the 5 empires have surrounded the imperial city and forced the Sage Emperor and the Sage Emperor to flee? Yesterday, my family sent me another jade scroll to tell me the latest news. The Sage Emperor and the Sage Emperor are still missing, and there is no news of them. The experts of the various empires are all looking for them, vowing to snatch the sword of burial of heaven. The imperial city has been destroyed by the experts of the various empires, and it has been reduced to rubble. Millions of citizens have lost their homes. Now, the entire empire has fallen apart, and the Chu Yun Empire only exists in name. In order to protect themselves, the various city lords and tyrants have all formed their own factions, and they are fighting against the experts of the 5 empires. Once the war started, the entire empire collapsed and fell apart. Billions of citizens have fallen into an abyss of suffering, and they are at the mercy of the various empires. The border guards were still tenaciously holding on and fighting, but they wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Based on the current situation, it will take at most 2 to 3 years for the empire's territory to be divided up by the 5 empires. This is all Ji Tianqing's fault. He was the culprit. If he hadn't offered the sword of burial of heaven to the Saint Emperor, how could he have ended up like this? The young geniuses were filled with grief and indignation when they talked about the current situation of the Chu Yun Empire. The tragedy that had befallen the Chu Yun Empire had forced them to work together and treat Ji Tianqing as their mortal enemy. Lan Yiqing became the backbone of the group, and Yin Wuxia was excluded. After all, everyone knew that Yin Wuxia was the closest to Ji Tianqing, and he had even benefited greatly from it. Lan Yiqing pondered for a moment, then transmitted his voice to the geniuses. Ji Tianqing is not only our enemy, but also the enemy of the entire Chu Yun Empire. If there is a chance, we must kill him at all costs to get rid of him and take revenge for the people of the empire. A young man shook his head and said angrily, "But we are on God's Sealing Mountain and we don't have a chance to do anything to him. Do we have to monitor him and wait for him to leave God's Sealing Mountain before we kill him?" Another dark-skinned man frowned and said worriedly, "We have already fought with him before. Even if we attacked together, we were still no match for him. Even if he leaves God's Sealing Mountain, we may not be able to kill him." At this moment, Kuang Long smirked and said coldly, "Don't worry, we don't have to wait for him to leave God's Sealing Mountain. Today, we can take revenge." The 3 young geniuses looked at him and asked curiously, "Kuang Long, do you have a plan?" Kuang Long nodded and said seriously, "Today's God-disciple test is our last chance. If we miss this chance, it will be difficult to kill him." Everyone knew that after the God-disciple test, Ji Tianqing would definitely become a God-disciple and enter the top 5. As for the few of them, they would most likely be eliminated and sent to the glacier mine to mine. From then on, they would not even be able to see Ji Tianqing's face. How would they have the chance to kill him? At this thought, the hatred in their hearts intensified and they gritted their teeth. Kuang Long continued, "For today's God-disciple test, we will draw lots to decide our opponents and fight in the arena. Among the 5 of us, there will be 1 or 2 who will have the chance to fight with Ji Tianqing." He paused and asked in a low voice, "If there is a way for you to severely injure or kill Ji Tianqing, but you will also lose your lives, would you be willing to do it?" The 3 young geniuses were stunned and weighed their options seriously. Sacrifice our lives to severely injure or kill Ji Tianqing? Ji Tianqing is the son of God and I am just an ordinary genius. After today, I will be sent to the glacier mine to mine. I am willing. The empire has collapsed because of Ji Tianqing. My family has also suffered a great loss because of Ji Tianqing and is on the verge of disbanding. As long as I can kill him, I am willing to exchange my life for his. The three of them hesitated for a moment and nodded their heads in agreement. Kuang Long looked relieved and said with a sinister smile, "If that is the case, I am relieved. I have 5 burning spirit and blood explosion elixirs. Later on, each of us will take one. Whoever fights with Ji Tianqing in the arena secretly takes the burning spirit and blood explosion elixir. You will definitely be able to kill Ji Tianqing when he least expects it." Suddenly hearing this news, the 3 young geniuses were shocked and aghast. Burning spirit and blood explosion elixir? Isn't that a forbidden elixir of the ultimate primordial soul grade? Once you take the burning spirit and blood explosion elixir, you will be able to burn your primordial soul and explode your blood vessels. It will be like a self-explosion and explode with 10 times the power. In this way, Ji Tianqing will be caught off guard. Even if he doesn't die, he will be severely injured. However, if you take this forbidden elixir, you will explode and die. There is no doubt that you will die. Kuang Long grinned and sneered, "Are you afraid? Lan Yi and I have already decided that if we fight with Ji Tianqing, we will definitely take this elixir. Also, other than the burning spirit and blood explosion elixir, we have other preparations. I, Kuang Long, have already sworn that even if my blood spills all over the arena and my bones are crushed, I will drag Ji Tianqing down with me." The 3 young geniuses looked at Kuang Long in awe and respect. "Kuang Long, you are so determined?" Lan Yi explained, 3 days ago, Kuang Long received a message from his family. His family was besieged by the elites of the 2 empires and many of them were killed. The millions of miles of land under his family were also occupied by the armies of the 2 empires. Chapter 1609. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. The sun rose into the sky and shone with golden sunlight, covering the peak of the Mount of Gods. Under everyone's anticipation, the Great Guardian and the 6 gods' messengers finally arrived at the square. The Great Guardian walked to the center of the square and asked the 6 gods' messengers to count the number of people to see if everyone was present and if anyone was absent. In just 10 breaths, the 6 gods' messengers had counted the number of people present. After making sure that all 51 geniuses were present, the Great Guardian said in a serious tone, "Everyone, today is the day of the God's disciple assessment, and its importance is self-evident. It has been half a year since everyone came to the Mount of Gods. In this half a year, everyone has been cultivating diligently. Today's assessment is to test the results of everyone's cultivation. The assessment method is very simple. Fighting in the arena is the best way to test one's strength. The rules of this assessment are the same as usual. You are not allowed to use your battle pets or spirit beasts. You are not allowed to rely on external forces, and you are not allowed to kill anyone. You will draw lots to determine your opponents. You will fight one-on-one. The winner will advance, and the loser will be eliminated. In the end, the top 10 disciples will become honorary gods' disciples. The top 5 disciples will represent the Mount of Gods and participate in the exchange meeting of the 3 holy kingdoms. Those who fail will be sent to the glacier mine." The Great Guardian's majestic voice rang out above the square, shaking everyone's hearts and stimulating their fighting spirit. Many people's eyes lit up, and they exuded a strong fighting spirit. Their expressions were firm and unyielding. The Great Guardian looked around and was satisfied with everyone's reaction. He continued, "Of course, the Divine Master does not only look at strength when selecting God's disciples. In addition to fighting in the arena, if anyone has special talents such as array formation, alchemy, talisman, etc., they can also accept my assessment. As long as one of these talents can reach the tribulation level, they can also become a God's disciple." Many geniuses' eyes lit up when they heard the Great Guardian's words. However, the flames of hope that had just been ignited were quickly extinguished. After all, the young geniuses present were only at the primordial soul realm. Even if someone was proficient in alchemy, array formation, and talisman, they could not reach the tribulation level. Then, the great guardian waved his hands and cast a spell to set up a large array. A 5-colored light barrier shrouded the entire square. Within the light barrier, within a radius of 2,000 feet, was the arena for this assessment. Everyone was outside the light barrier, standing at the edge of the square to watch the battle. 50 disciples will participate in the first round of assessment. As the son of the oracle, Ji Tianqing does not need to participate in the first round. The great guardian announced the start of the test with a dignified voice. Then, he took out 50 jade slips and suspended them in the air. The 50 jade slips danced in the air at an extremely fast speed, crossing each other for a long time before they gradually stopped flying and divided into 25 pairs. Many geniuses cursed in their hearts at the head protector's decision. They were very jealous of Ji Tianqing, but there was nothing they could do. The 5 geniuses of the Chu Yun Empire frowned with ugly expressions. The chief guardian took out the first pair of jade slips and read aloud, "The first round of the examination begins now." The first match, Tao Yunjian vs Gong Tiangao. As his voice fell, the 2 young geniuses whose names were called walked out of the crowd with serious expressions and stepped into the 5-colored light shield. The 2 young geniuses had strength at the 5th firmament essence spirit realm. They exuded a ferocious and sharp aura. The 2 of them did not say anything superfluous. They did not even exchange pleasantries or bow. When the chief guardian announced the start of the battle, the 2 of them drew their Dharma treasures and charged forward without any regard for their own safety. The intense fighting continued for a full 15 minutes before gradually coming to a stop. One of them had his arms and legs severed. His body was severely injured and his combat strength was severely reduced. He had no choice but to admit defeat. Although the other person won, it was a Pyrrhic victory that left him covered in injuries. After the battle ended, the loser was helped away to recuperate. The victors sat at the edge of the square and consumed pills to recuperate, preparing for the next round of the examination. Following that, the chief guardian read out 1 pair of names after another. Pairs of young geniuses took the stage one after another. They used their mystic techniques with all their might and fought their opponents to a standstill. Deafening booms filled the air above the square for a long time. The dazzling radiance of dermic spells illuminated half the sky, covering the radiance of the sun. All sorts of powerful mystic techniques caused the ground to tremble incessantly. Countless ravines cracked open and turned the ground into ruins. Fortunately, the defensive array set up by the chief guardian was strong enough to block all the aftershocks of the battle. Everyone watched the battle from outside the light shield and was not affected at all. Unknowingly, 8 hours had passed. It was evening and the sun was setting in the west. The first round of the examination had finally ended. 25 young geniuses who were covered in injuries and looked miserable were eliminated. They left the square with gloomy expressions. The 25 geniuses who had won were also injured. They were busy recuperating and recuperating. Their expressions were still solemn. They did not dare to relax at all. Everyone knew that the first round of the examination was just an appetizer. The next few rounds of the examination were the fiercest battles. Qin Sengxiong, Song Zhanyu, and Jiang Ningxue were the top 5 geniuses. They easily defeated their opponents and were not injured. They secretly observed Ji Tianqing and viewed him as their strongest opponent. Only 4 people from the Chu Yun Empire advanced. They were Wu Kei, Lan Yiqing, Kuang Long, and a young genius. The chief guardian allowed everyone to rest for 2 hours. At dusk, the second round of the examination finally began. The 25 geniuses and Ji Tianqing made a total of 26 people. They had to draw lots to determine their opponents. The chief guardian waved his hand and took out 26 jade slips. After a while, the results were drawn. He picked up the jade slips and read them one by one. The second round of the examination has begun. The first round, Jiang Ningxue vs Tian Yuchuan. The second round, Hua Qingyu vs. Ji Tianqing. The third round, Qian Feiyang vs. Ji Tianqing's expression was calm as usual as he listened to the result read out by the great guardian. However, Lan Yiqing, Kuang Long, and the other two's eyes lit up. They were filled with joy. The young genius beside Kuang Long looked as if he had been struck by lightning. His body froze on the spot and his expression became strange. Obviously, he was Hua Qingyu. He was going to fight Ji Tianqing. Kuang Long stared at him and said in a serious tone, Hua Qingyu, the time to sacrifice your life for the empire has come. Remember, before the battle, you must bite the elixir hidden in your mouth. As long as you can kill Ji Tianqing, even if you die, it will be worth it. You will be the greatest hero of the Chu Yun Empire. All of us will remember your contributions and sacrifice. You will be remembered in history. Chapter 1610. Both Hua Qingyu and Kuang Long knew that once he consumed the burning spirit blood explosion pill, it would be irreversible. Regardless of whether they could kill Ji Tianqing, he would definitely die. It was easy to talk about life and death. When it came to the critical moment, it was hard to make up one's mind. Hua Qingyu lowered his head, his expression as cold as ice. His eyes flickered for a long time, and his emotions were complicated and perturbed. A full 100 breaths had passed, but he still had not calmed down. At this moment, the first battle was about to end. Jiang Ningxue was the third-ranked genius, while Tian Yushang was only at the 5th level Essence Soul Realm and was not well known. After exchanging more than 100 blows, Tian Yushang was severely injured and fainted on the spot from Jiang Ningxue's attack. At the end of the battle, the chief guardian announced the results. Tian Yushang was eliminated and carried out of the 5-colored light barrier by the golden armored guards. Jiang Ningxue only suffered minor injuries and returned to the crowd calmly. The second battle was about to begin. Ji Tianqing stepped into the 5-colored light barrier with a calm expression and stood in the middle of the arena. Hua Qingyu was still in a daze as he pondered. Kuang Long was anxious and hurriedly sent a voice transmission to urge him, Hua Qingyu, what are you waiting for? You must not miss such a great opportunity. If you back down, we will never forgive you. Lan Yiqing looked at him coldly and shouted, don't worry. Even if you can't kill Ji Tianqing, you can injure him severely. When we meet him, we will definitely kill him to avenge you, us, and the Outcloud Empire. Hua Qingyu's fighting spirit was ignited, and he finally made up his mind. A light flashed in his right hand, and a dark red pill the size of a date pit appeared. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he raised his hand and stuffed the pill into his mouth. The next moment, he strode into the 5-colored light barrier with his head held high and walked toward Ji Tianqing with a murderous aura. Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long looked at his narrow back and clearly felt a solemn and stirring atmosphere. It was a determination to perish together with his opponent even though he knew he would die. A moment later, Hua Qingyu walked to the center of the ring and stood 1,000 feet away from Ji Tianqing. He stared coldly at Ji Tianqing, his body exuding a strong killing intent as he shouted in a deep voice, Ji Tianqing. You despicable dog. You've caused our Chu Yun Empire to fall apart. We've been besieged by the other empires, and countless people have died. Today, I will kill you to avenge Tianqing and rid the world of evil. Ji Tianqing's body was as straight as a sword as he stood on the square with an indifferent expression. He glanced at Hua Qingyu indifferently and said calmly, fortune and misfortune do not belong to anyone. If Saint Emperor Chu Yun did not intend to harm me, how could I have ended up like this? As for the destruction of the Chu Yun Empire and the destruction of the people, what does that have to do with me? If you hate someone, you should hate Saint Emperor Chu Yun. Hua Qingyu's anger and murderous intent wantonly attacked his rationality. His eyes were red, and his face was distorted as he roared, bullshit. Do you think you can shirk responsibility by quibbling like this? You're the culprit, and your death is not to be regretted. Ji Tianqing frowned and shouted coldly, looks like you've forgotten the lesson from before. I'll give you a chance. Admit defeat and retreat, and you'll still be safe. Don't wait for me to make a move, or you won't even have the chance to admit defeat. Hua Qingyu's face turned even redder, and a dark red glow appeared in his eyes. However, he still didn't make a move, nor did he want to admit defeat. He cursed with a venomous tone, "Ji Tianqing, you despicable bastard. Are you afraid now after doing those outrageous things?" Obviously, he was deliberately stalling for time. The burning spirit blood explosion elixir was rapidly melting in his body, turning into countless dark red currents that surged into his limbs, bones, and primordial spirit. An incomparably violent and destructive power was madly gathering in his body. He could clearly feel that his dermic power and primordial spirit power were soaring at an unbelievable speed. In just 3 short breaths, his strength had doubled. As long as he could delay for another 10 breaths of time, his strength would skyrocket by 4 times. However, Hua Qingyu's plan was destined to fail. Ji Tianqing was acutely aware that there was a violent power running amok in his body, like a volcano that was about to erupt. When Ji Tianqing saw his skin turn red and his eyes glowing red, he realized what was going on. Ha ha ha. Using such crooked means to increase your combat power? What a useless piece of trash. After a sneer, he suddenly raised his right hand and slammed it over. Heaven-seizing palm. A giant golden palm the size of a millstone appeared out of thin air and slammed toward Hua Qingyu at a speed faster than lightning. Hua Qingyu did not back down. He quickly took out a halberd that was more than 10 feet long and waved it toward the giant palm, creating a sky full of flames. Bam! 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 In a series of muffled sounds, the sky full of flames exploded, turning into fiery fragments that scattered in all directions. Hua Qingyu and his halberd were sent flying and slammed into the 5-colored light shield. When he got up from the ground, he was bleeding from all 7 orifices. A large part of his chest had caved in, revealing his white bones. Although he was severely injured, he did not seem to feel any pain. He waved his halberd wildly and charged toward Ji Tianqing without any regard for his life. Ji Tianqing. The Chuyun Empire is your sworn enemy and will never forgive you. Hua Qingyu roared hysterically and desperately waved his halberd of flames and golden light. They turned into thousands of spear shadows and shrouded Ji Tianqing's figure. Hua Qingyu's desperate and frenzied charge made Ji Tianqing even more certain that there was something wrong with him. Around the square, the great guardian, Hong Qingtian, and a few oracles who were watching the battle also sensed that something was wrong. What's going on? Hua Qingyu seems to have lost his mind. I heard him yelling about the Chuyun Empire being his sworn enemy. It seems to be because of the Chuyun Empire. By the way, I heard that the Holy Emperor and Holy Master of the Chuyun Empire have disappeared for more than a month. Now the Chuyun Empire is in chaos and the imperial city has been destroyed into ruins. That's true. I heard about it too. However, Mount God has never cared about worldly affairs. But no matter how monstrous Ji Tianqing is, he can't possibly cause the Chuyun Empire to be destroyed. What's wrong with Hua Qingyu? He's completely disregarding his life and looks like he wants to perish together with Ji Tianqing. Perish together? You're thinking too much. How can Hua Qingyu have that ability? Just as the crowd was discussing telepathically, there was a change in the battle situation in the arena. The power of the burning spirit blood explosion elixir was about to reach its peak. Hua Qingyu's body was as red as fire. His meridians, flesh, and skin were all red and swollen as if they were about to explode. His combat strength had also increased by several times. He rushed toward Ji Tianqing without any regard for his life and vowed to kill Ji Tianqing on the spot. However, Ji Tianqing saw through the clues and made a prompt decision to use his ultimate skill. Soul Slash. Chapter 1611. Swish. 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 Four golden swords tore through the sky. Regardless of whether it was the monstrous flames or the sky full of spear shadows, they were unable to stop the golden sword's attack. All obstacles were destroyed by the golden swords. In the next moment, 4 golden light magic swords pierced Hua Qingyu, piercing his shoulders and legs respectively. Bam! 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 The 4 golden swords pierced through his body. The violent impact sent him flying and crashing into the 5-colored light shield at the edge of the square. The 4 golden swords were so powerful that they pierced into the 5-colored light shield. Hua Qingyu was also nailed to the 5-colored light shield by the 4 golden swords. No matter how hard he struggled, the 4 golden swords did not move or dissipate. He could not break free in a short period of time. Ji Tianqing stood at the other end of the square and looked at him coldly from 2,000 feet away. Hua Qingyu, the outcome has been decided. Admit defeat. Everyone who heard this thought that it was a matter of course. No one thought that Ji Tianqing was arrogant. After all, Hua Qingyu was nailed to the formation light shield before he could even touch the corner of Ji Tianqing's clothes. The difference in strength was too great. However, Hua Qingyu had gone crazy and could not listen to anything. His body swelled violently and his skin and flesh cracked continuously. His entire body was burning with blood-red flames. An incomparably violent flame current erupted from his body. No. I don't want to die. Hua Qingyu struggled wildly and used all his strength to let out a final roar. A deep and vigorous roar reverberated within the light shield of the formation. In the next moment, his entire body exploded with a bang. His fleshly body and nascent spirit had turned into surging, bloody light that spread out in all directions in the form of overwhelming, bloody flames. It was like a blood-red mushroom cloud rose into the sky and quickly filled the entire formation. The earth-shattering explosion was like a thunderclap that resounded in the sky for hundreds of miles. The entire peak of Mount Godseal shook violently. The raging blood-red flames crazily attacked the defensive formation, causing the 5-colored light barrier to shake violently. At that moment, everyone was stunned. The Great Guardian, Hong Qingtian, the 6 divine messengers, and more than 20 geniuses were dumbfounded. No one expected Hua Qingyu to explode. How could this be? Is this a self-explosion? Why did Hua Qingyu self-explode? Oh my God. It's just the God-disciple assessment. Even if he is eliminated, he will be sent to the mines. Why did he have to self-explode? Hua Qingyu is usually very ordinary and low-key. He doesn't seem like a crazy person. Why would he do something so crazy? The self-explosion of an primordial spirit is. This time, Ji Tianqing is definitely done for. Even if he doesn't die from the explosion, he will be seriously injured. Everyone cried out in surprise and disgust in disbelief. In the next moment, the Great Guardian and Hong Qingtian came back to their senses. Their faces changed drastically, and they rushed into the 5-colored light barrier without caring about anything else. Oh no. Ji Tianqing is going to die. Oh no, Tianqing is okay. However, before they could rush into the defensive formation, Ji Tianqing's voice rang in their heads. Don't worry, I'm fine. When the Great Guardian and Hong Qingtian heard this, they finally let out a sigh of relief. They had been in charge of Mount Godseal for many years and had presided over countless God-disciple assessments. They rarely encountered such an accident. As long as it was a normal person, who would self-destruct to attack their opponent. After a long time, the blood-red flames in the 5-colored light shield dissipated. Everyone stared at the arena, waiting for the result. Lan Yiqing and Mad Dragon, in particular, had complicated expressions and their hearts were in their throats. Both of them were looking forward to it, hoping that Hua Qingyu's self-destruction would kill Ji Tianqing on the spot. Even if it did not, it would be a good thing if Ji Tianqing was seriously injured. However, when all the flames and dust dissipated, the two of them were dumbfounded when they saw the scene in the arena. Ji Tianqing, dressed in a white robe, was standing in the arena unscathed. There was not a single injury on his body. Even the jade crown and hairstyle on his head were as good as new. The terrifying power of Hua Qingyu's self-destruction had no effect on him at all. The great guardian, Hong Qingtian, several divine envoys, and many other geniuses were in disbelief. Lan Yiqing and Mad Dragon looked terrible. They gritted their teeth in anger. Damn bastard. Not only is he not dead, he is not injured at all. How is this possible? Hua Qingyu has the strength of a 5th-level essence soul realm cultivator. The power of his self-explosion can kill a 6th-level essence soul realm cultivator. How can Ji Tianqing be unscathed? Even if the two of them could not accept the result, the truth was right in front of them. No matter how angry they were, it was useless. The great guardian announced the result with a dignified expression. He said loudly, "The second battle, Ji Tianqing wins." Let me reiterate that today's God-disciple assessment is a fair competition and not a fight to the death. If anyone uses such extreme means again, I will not let them off easily. The crowd heard the great guardian's warning and felt ashamed. They muttered to themselves, other than that lunatic Hua Qingyu, who would self-explode for a test. Ji Tianqing left the arena calmly and walked out of the 5-colored light shield. He glanced coldly at Lan Yiqing and Mad Dragon before turning to walk back to Hong Qingtian's side. Lan Yiqing and Mad Dragon trembled when he looked at them. They lowered their heads guiltily. However, the great guardian's warning and Ji Tianqing's glare could not extinguish the fire of hatred in their hearts. Hong Qingtian saw that Ji Tianqing had returned safely. He looked at him seriously and reminded him through voice transmission, "Tianqing, what happened to Hua Qingyu? Why did he self-explode all of a sudden?" Ji Tianqing looked nonchalant and said with a smile, "Elder Hong, are you suspecting that I used a secret technique to explode him?" "That's not it." Hong Qingtian shook his head and said in a complicated tone, "I just don't understand. What kind of blood feud would make him so crazy?" Ji Tianqing smiled and said calmly, "Who knows? Maybe that guy was bewitched by someone." Hong Qingtian thought for a moment and reminded him solemnly, "Tianqing, I saw the scene when Hua Qingyu self-destructed. It didn't look like a normal self-destruct. It's very likely that he used some kind of secret technique or elixir pill. I don't know much about the feud between you and the Chu Yun Empire and I won't interfere. However, you have to be extra careful in the next few rounds of the assessment." Ji Tianqing understood his concern and had already guessed it. He nodded and agreed. The assessment continued. Chapter 16:12. 4 hours later, it was already late at night. The moon hung high in the night sky, and the stars twinkled in the sky. The second round of the assessment had finally ended. The 13 geniuses who had won successfully advanced to the next round. They included Ji Tianqing, Qin Sangxiong, Song Zhanyu, Jiang Ningxue, Qian Feiyang, Lan Yiqing, and others. Kuang Long was one of the 13 geniuses who had been eliminated. However, the rules of the God-Sealing Mountain were strict and fair. The 13 geniuses who had been eliminated could go through 2 more rounds of battles to choose the strongest 3. These 3 would draw lots with the 13 geniuses who had advanced to the next round to fight for the 10 spots of God's disciples. Ji Tianqing, Qin Sangxiong, and the others stayed at the edge of the square to rest. The 13 geniuses who had been eliminated began to fight. This was their last chance, so everyone was eager to participate. Even if they were severely injured, even if they had lost an arm or a leg, they gritted their teeth and went up to the arena. A series of incomparably tragic battles played out unceasingly on the arena. The 13 geniuses who had been eliminated spent 2 hours to go through 2 rounds of battles to decide the 3 strongest geniuses. These 3 strongest geniuses were the lucky ones. They had taken the last chance to draw lots with the 13 geniuses who had advanced to the next round to fight for the 10 spots of God's disciples. Kuang Long was one of the 3 strongest geniuses. He had used a forbidden secret skill that he had never used before. He had sacrificed 300 years of his life to defeat his opponent. Although he had succeeded, his martial arts foundation had been destroyed. He would be stuck at the primordial soul realm for the rest of his life. Besides Lan Yiqing, no one knew why he had done so. Only 16 geniuses were left out of the original 51. The other 35 geniuses had been eliminated. They left the square and went back to their residences to recover. Among the 16 geniuses, most of them were severely injured, except for a few powerful ones. The Great Guardian followed the rules and gave everyone 6 hours to rest. When the long night had passed and a new day had arrived, the third round of the assessment had officially begun. Swoosh! The Great Guardian took out 16 jade slips and threw them into the sky, where they started to spin rapidly. After a while, the drawing of lots ended. The 16 jade slips were divided into 8 pairs and floated in front of the Great Guardian. He picked up each pair of jade slips and read out the names of the geniuses. The third round of the assessment will now begin. First match, Yin Wuke vs Lan Yiqing. The second match was between Qin Sangqiong and Li Jiudao. The third match was between Ji Tianqing and Mad Dragon. The fourth match, Jiang Mingxue vs. The 16 young geniuses wore complicated expressions as they murmured in their hearts after hearing the Great Guardian's announcement. Yin Wuke and Lan Yiqing were both geniuses of the Chu Yun Empire. It was considered a civil war between the two of them, which was very disadvantageous to the Outcloud Empire. However, the Chu Yun Empire had fallen apart and only existed in name. Even if they had a civil war, not many people would sympathize with them. Lan Yiqing's face was gloomy. He looked at Yin Wuke with hostility. Although it was quite a pity that she couldn't compete with Ji Tianqing. However, Yin Wuke and Ji Tianqing were good friends, so she transferred her hatred towards Ji Tianqing to Yin Wu. Wuke could feel her hatred and killing intent, but he didn't care. In the past few months, he had been cultivating the limitless yin yang skill. He had made some progress and was extremely confident in himself. Out of everyone, the most excited person was Mad Dragon. He clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. His eyes shone with excitement as he roared in his heart. Ha 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 ha. The heavens are helping me. This is the will of the heavens. Even the heavens are helping me. Ji Tianqing is dead meat. With the burning soul blood explosion pill and the soul destroying nail, I will destroy his body and soul. As he roared in his heart, his eyes shone with blood-red killing intent as he looked at Ji Tianqing from afar. Coincidentally, Ji Tianqing was also staring at him with a cold gaze, and a mocking sneer hung on the corner of his mouth. Seeing Ji Tianqing's reaction, Mad Dragon's heart skipped a beat. Ji Tianqing. Could it be that he has already noticed my plan and seen through my thoughts? After being stunned for a while, he came back to his senses and laughed coldly. Humph. So what if he has seen through my plan? The results of the draw have already been decided. I will fight him. Anyway, he had already made up his mind to die. With his 2 powerful trump cards, he would definitely be able to drag Ji Tianqing down with him. Soon, the third round of the test began. Yin Wuke and Lan Yiqing stepped into the array and stood still in the arena. Both of them were silent as they looked at each other coldly. Hearing the Great Guardian's command, both of them took out the yin-yang umbrella and the extreme ice sword without hesitation and began to fight fiercely. Half a year ago, Lan Yiqing was the #1 genius of the Chu Yun Empire. Her strength far exceeded Yin Wuke's. She had mastered the primordial spirit sword control technique and the Xian Bing sword realm. She also had the tribulation level extreme ice sword. Now, she was at the 6th level of the primordial spirit realm and was close to the 7th level. Her strength had increased by several times. She was confident that she could defeat Yin Wuke. After all, she knew him very well. However, not long after the two of them started fighting, she repeatedly revealed a look of astonishment, and her heart was incomparably shocked. The current Yin Wuke was clearly not the same Yin Wuke from half a year ago. Not only was he stronger, but the secret techniques he used were also unfamiliar to Lan Yiqing. Especially the yin-yang umbrella. Under his control, it could appear and disappear unpredictably. It was ever-changing and unbelievably powerful. The two of them had only exchanged 20 moves when Lan Yiqing was at a disadvantage. She was sent flying by Yin Wux's palm strike. After 40 moves, Lan Yiqing was forced to retreat. She had almost no strength to fight back. Her injuries were also worsening. After 100 moves, Lan Yiqing was bleeding from all her orifices. She was sent flying and crashed into the 5-colored light barrier. Before she could get up, Yin Wuk had already descended from the sky. He held the Yin Yang umbrella and released a huge wheel. It was a black and white wheel. It carried the power of Yin and Yang in the world as it came crashing down. Lan Yiqing's expression changed drastically. She waved the extreme ice sword with all her strength, wanting to form the Xian Bing sword realm to block it. However, with a loud boom, the sword realm that had not yet formed was shattered by the black and white wheel. She was also suppressed by the black and white wheel. She crashed into the ground pathetically. Her vision turned black and she fainted. The battle ended. Yin Wuk had won easily. After the Great Guardian announced the result, Yin Wuk held the Yin Yang umbrella and slowly left the arena. The unconscious Lan Yiqing was also carried away by the golden armored guards. Seeing this scene, everyone realized that Yin Wuk's strength had increased by a lot. Kuang Long's expression was very dark. His eyes were filled with hatred and killing intent. Hua Qingyu is dead. Lan Yiqing has been defeated. I'm the only one left, Ji Tianqing, I can't wait any longer. Let's welcome death together. Chapter 1613. Soon, the second round of the battle began. Qin Sanxiong, who was dressed in gray linen clothes, was the first to enter the ring. He held his Sanxiong saber and stood proudly in the middle of the ring. His opponent was a burly middle-aged man. His name was Li Jiudao. Coincidentally, he was also a genius expert who used the saber. His saber skills were exquisite. Unfortunately, he was unlucky to have encountered the number one genius, Qin Sanxiong. Compared to Qin Sanxiong's ferocious saber skills, his saber skills paled in comparison. They were inferior and clumsy. After exchanging 30 blows, Li Jiudao's saber was knocked out of his hand. He spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward. Li Jiudao was straightforward. He admitted defeat without hesitation. After all, from the moment the results of the draw came out, he had already predicted the result. He could only admit that he was unlucky to have fought with Qin Sanxiong in the same ring. Seeing that Li Jiudao had admitted defeat, Qin Sanxiong kept his saber and did not attack again. After the Great Guardian announced the result, the two of them left the ring one after another. Next, the third round of the battle began. Ji Tianqing strode into the array light shield and stood in the middle of the ring. Kuang Long took the burning spirit blood explosion elixir and entered the array light shield aggressively. He flew to the middle of the ring. He and Ji Tianqing were 100 feet apart. They looked at each other coldly. Although he had taken the burning spirit blood explosion elixir, he was in the same situation as Hua Qingyu. The violent effect of the elixir exploded in his body and attacked his primordial spirit. It made him violent and bloodthirsty. However, he did not lose his mind. He could still remain calm. He stared at Ji Tianqing and sneered. He asked in a mocking tone, Ji Tianqing, before the battle, I would like to ask you a question. Are you afraid of death? Many guardians, divine messengers, and geniuses in the square were puzzled and frowning. No one expected Kuang Long to ask such a strange question. Everyone guessed that Ji Tianqing would not answer. Or maybe he was not afraid of a question. However, to everyone's surprise, Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while. He then nodded solemnly. Of course, I am afraid. Therefore, those who want me dead will definitely die first. Hearing this answer, everyone in the square showed a strange expression. Many people pondered for a moment before revealing expressions of shock and admiration. This Ji Tianqing really can't be judged by common sense. Interesting. If he says he's not afraid, then he's being hypocritical. But his answer was impeccable, and he was extremely confident and arrogant. You're still as arrogant as ever. Just as everyone was discussing in low voices, Kuang Long spoke again. You've always been arrogant and conceited. I thought you weren't afraid of death. Unfortunately, I'm not afraid of death. As long as I die a worthy death, I will die without hesitation. As he spoke, a murderous aura burst out from his body, and a dark red flame lit up behind him. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing immediately frowned as he saw the clues. There's a violent energy fluctuation in Kuang Long's body, and his combat strength has also increased by several times. Is he in the same situation as Hu Qingyu? Could it be that he also wants to self-destruct and die with me? Just as this thought appeared in his mind, Kuang Long had already rushed over like a flash of light, not giving him any time to think. Flying Dragon Claw. Kuang Long leaped into the sky and waved the bronze chain wrapped around his body. Dazzling flames condensed into 6 giant flaming claws that grabbed at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing did not hesitate to draw the black dragon sword and counterattack with it. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. He waved the black dragon sword and slashed out 6 sword radiances at lightning speed toward Kuang Long in the sky. Bam, 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 bam. A series of muffled sounds rang out as the 6 sword radiances collided with the giant claws and exploded at the same time. Kuang Long did not stop. He waved the bronze chain recklessly and smashed it down from the sky. Ji Tianqing put his left hand behind his back and held the black dragon sword in his right hand. He used the stealth step and disappeared instantly. In the next moment, he teleported thousands of feet away, dodged Kuang Long's attack, and slashed at Kuang Long with his sword. Kuang Long had no time to dodge and could only block with the bronze chain. Clang! The crisp sound of metal clashing rang out. The simple bronze chain was cut apart by the black dragon sword on the spot. Following that, Kuang Long pounced on Ji Tianqing like a madman. He did not care about his own safety at all and fought with his life on the line. Ji Tianqing used the stealth step and his figure flickered continuously in the sky. He was sometimes east, sometimes west, sometimes left, and sometimes right. It was impossible to catch him. Kuang Long attacked wildly for more than 10 times, but he could not even touch the corner of his clothes. On the contrary, he kept attacking with his sword and cut off all 6 of Kuang Long's bronze chains. He even left a few deep bloody grooves on Kuang Long's body. Soon, 10 breaths of time passed. The power of the burning spirit blood explosion pill finally erupted completely. Kuang Long's combat strength increased by 8 times. His entire body swelled violently and his whole body burned with blood-red flames. The extreme pain caused his face to contort. He was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He was on the verge of collapse. He no longer fought with Ji Tianqing and decisively used his strongest killing move. Tyrant Dragon rumbles the sky. He roared with a loud voice. Flames surged out of his body and his body transformed into a giant flaming dragon that was 10,000 feet long. This flaming dragon was extremely majestic. Its body was 10,000 feet long and it was like a flaming mountain range. It circled in the sky and waved its 4 dragon claws crazily. In an instant, hundreds of giant flaming claws descended from the sky. Instantly, the arena within a radius of 20,000 feet was sealed by the giant flaming claws. It wanted to destroy the entire arena so that Ji Tianqing had nowhere to hide. Moreover, it had locked onto Ji Tianqing's aura and used its huge dragon head to smash Ji Tianqing. Despite being in such a dangerous situation, Ji Tianqing still managed to remain calm. He could see that Kuang Long was on the verge of self-destruction and was about to lose control. However, he was in the arena and had to think of a way to resist. It was impossible for him to escape the arena. At the critical moment, he did not hesitate to use his primordial spirit golden sword and slashed at the flaming dragon with all his might. Bang! 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 In a series of muffled sounds, the primordial spirit golden sword shattered more than 30 giant flaming claws and slashed at the flaming dragon. The flaming dragon was cut in half by the primordial spirit golden sword and broke into 2 on the spot. At the same time, dozens of flaming claws slammed into the arena at the same time and drowned Ji Tianqing's figure. Boom! 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 A deafening sound burst out, reverberating endlessly in the sky. The ground within a radius of 20,000 feet was immediately turned into ruins and was enveloped by endless flames. The entire Mount God bestowment was shaken by such a powerful impact. Ji Tianqing's dermic power shield was also shattered. His hair was messy and draped over his shoulders. His face was a little pale. Obviously, he relied on his powerful dermic power and strong physical defense to block the attack of the flaming dragon claws. However, at this moment, the flaming dragon that was broken in two suddenly waved its front claws and shot out a dark and sharp cold light towards Ji Tianqing. Chapter 1614. Soul-Vanquishing Nail. This was Kuang Long's trump card, a mid-grade tribulation-level Dharma treasure. It was the most insidious item. It could pierce through dermic power shields and bodies, directly destroying a warrior's essence soul. Although the soul-vanquishing nail was a mid-grade tribulation-level Dharma treasure like Lan Yiqing's extreme ice sword, it was a Dharma treasure. The extreme ice sword was a Dharma treasure that could be used for long periods of time. The soul-vanquishing nail was a consumable Dharma treasure. It would explode after one use. There was a fundamental difference between the two. Therefore, the soul-vanquishing nail was several times stronger than the extreme ice sword. Kuang Long had once used this insidious Dharma treasure to kill a 9th Firmament Essence Soul Realm expert in a sneak attack. He firmly believed that Ji Tianqing was dead for sure. His essence soul would be destroyed by the soul-vanquishing nail. Swoosh! In an instant, the black beam arrived in front of Ji Tianqing and was about to pierce his forehead. At the critical moment, he sensed the impending danger of death, but he remained calm. His eyes were as sharp as lightning as he stared at the incoming black beam. He instantly opened the third eye on his forehead and released an endless amount of purple divine lightning towards the black light. The dazzling purple lightning condensed into a 30-foot-long divine lightning beam. It collided with the cold black beam, producing a thunderous roar. Boom! The cold black beam was instantly drowned by the lightning. It could not withstand the might of the divine lightning beam and was shattered. The half-foot-long soul-vanquishing nail was also sent flying by the terrifying might of the divine lightning. Swoosh! The soul-vanquishing nail flew 10,000 feet away and struck the flaming dragon's tail. Boom! The soul-vanquishing nail exploded, blasting half of the flaming dragon into smithereens and emitting a black beam. Kuang Long was dumbfounded. He only had half of his body left. His massive dragon head was still bulging. His dragon eyes were protruding as he stared at Ji Tianqing. No! How is this possible? He was filled with despair and extreme grief. Originally, he was determined to obtain it and was certain that the spirit-destroying nail could kill Ji Tianqing. Even if he could not kill him, he could severely injure Ji Tianqing. However, Ji Tianqing was unharmed. The soul-vanquishing nail flew back and destroyed half of his dragon body. His plan had been half destroyed. The incomparably violent explosive power fiercely battered half of his dragon body. The burning soul blood explosion pill's strength had reached its limits. He could no longer suppress it, and half of his dragon body was about to explode. Ji! Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. Let's die together. He let out a hysterical roar and dove down from the sky, pouncing towards Ji Tianqing without a care for anything else. At the same time, the gigantic flaming dragon body exploded with a boom. A deafening explosion resounded through the clouds, shaking the heavens and the earth. Endless flames mixed with dark red blood light exploded like a mushroom cloud, filling the five-colored light shield. It was yet another world-shaking self-detonation that could destroy the heavens and destroy the earth. The entire Mount God bestowment shook violently, and cracks appeared on the walls of the mountain. The geniuses, divine envoys, and protectors on the square were dumbfounded and petrified. Everyone stared at the five-colored light barrier and the surging flames and blood light. Their eyes widened in shock. Oh my God! Are people these days crazy? Hua Qingyu blew himself up, and now Kuang Long blew himself up as well. How stupid are they? It's too terrifying. Both Hua Qingyu and Kuang Long self-destructed in an attempt to perish together with Ji Tianqing. I wonder what kind of sin Ji Tianqing had committed that made Hua Qingyu and Kuang Long willing to die for him. Ji Tianqing was just blasted once, and now he's blasted again. I'm afraid he'll be crippled even if he doesn't die. The people of the Chu Yun Empire are all freaks and lunatics. In the future, don't provoke people from the Chu Yun Empire. They self-destruct at the slightest provocation. It's too scary. The geniuses were inexplicably horrified. Hong Qingtian was full of worry and his heart was in his throat. He was worried about Ji Tianqing's safety. The Great Protector's face was livid, and his eyes were filled with rage and killing intent. He was completely enraged. Previously, when Hua Qingyu blew himself up, he had sternly warned everyone. He did not expect the same thing to happen to Kuang Long. Such blatant disregard of his warning was an insult to him. If things continued to develop like this, wouldn't his words be taken in one ear and lost all credibility? Most importantly, there were 2 consecutive accidents in this year's God-Disciple assessment. If Ji Tianqing was really killed by the explosion, he would be severely punished when the Divine Master blamed him. After a long time, the flames in the 5-colored light barrier dissipated. A figure in a white robe appeared on the charred ruins. It was Ji Tianqing. Everyone's gaze was uniformly gathered on him. Other than his pale face and his white robe stained with dust, there were no injuries on his body. On his shoulders, there was a pair of dark golden wings that were shining with a dazzling golden light. Obviously, at the moment when Kuang Long blew himself up, he used the Kenshin battle robe to protect himself with a pair of wings. Although Kuang Long's self-destruction was terrifying, it could not do anything to the golden wings. Seeing this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. The hearts of the Great Guardian and Hong Qingtian finally returned to their stomachs. Ji Tianqing wins this battle. The Great Protector hurriedly announced the result of the battle. After Ji Tianqing left the arena, the Great Protector looked around and shouted coldly and sternly, "In just 2 hours, there were 2 consecutive accidents. I'll repeat what I said before. If anyone dares to use extreme means again, I'll intervene immediately and kill them without asking for any reason." The majestic voice reverberated in the square and shook everyone's hearts. Everyone knew that the Great Protector was truly enraged. The words, "without asking for any reason," "kill them without asking for any reason," made everyone's hearts tighten and cold sweat break out on their backs. In fact, before Kuang Long blew himself up, the Great Protector could have stopped him at any time. However, there had always been a rule in God's Mountain that the Great Protectors and messengers were not allowed to intervene in the battle of the God-Disciple assessment. Before Kuang Long blew himself up, no one was sure whether he was going to blow himself up or use a secret technique to increase his combat power. When the Great Protector realized that he was going to blow himself up, it was too late to stop him. However, it was different now. The Great Protector had spoken and made up his mind. If anyone else was in a similar situation, even if it was just a slight sign, he would intervene to stop them. He would even kill them directly to prevent future troubles. Many geniuses were worried and had to consider the consequences of recklessly using a forbidden secret technique to increase combat power. Hong Qingtian looked at Ji Tianqing with concern and said seriously, "Tianqing, you must have realized that something was wrong with Kuang Long. Why didn't you call me and the Great Protector? If you encounter a similar situation again, you must call me immediately and I'll definitely intervene." Ji Tianqing smiled and shook his head. He comforted Hong Qingtian, "Elder Hong, don't worry. Those who want to kill me are either eliminated or dead." Chapter 16-15. Hong Qingtian knew that Ji Tianqing had a blood feud with the Chu Yun Empire. If that was not the case, why would the people of the Chu Yun Empire hate him so much to the extent that they wanted to kill him? Luckily, the geniuses of the Chu Yun Empire had been eliminated. Kuang Long and Hua Qingyu had died. Only Yin Wuke had advanced. He had a good relationship with Ji Tianqing and did not have any grudges with him. Just as Ji Tianqing had said, no one would die with him and such a situation would not happen again. Then, the geniuses went up the stage one by one. After a series of exciting battles between dragons and tigers, the third round of the test ended. The 8 geniuses, including Ji Tianqing, continued to fight for the top 8 positions. Under the orders of the Great Guardian, they rested at the square temporarily. Among the 8 geniuses who had been eliminated, Kuang Long had died. The remaining 7 geniuses still had a chance. They continued to fight for the remaining 2 positions as God disciples. After a series of intense battles, the 2 most powerful geniuses fought their way out of the encirclement. They had successfully changed their destinies and became honorary God disciples. They could continue to cultivate in Mount God. As for the other 5 geniuses, they had been eliminated and could only leave. A few days later, they would be sent to the Glacier Holy Mine. Their future in martial arts would be bleak. When the sun was high in the sky, the 4th round of the examination began. The 8 geniuses, including Ji Tianqing, had to fight for the top 8 positions. Although it was already certain that the 8 of them would become God's disciples, Su Mo was still in a daze. However, only the top 5 geniuses could represent Mount God to participate in the exchange of the 3 holy kingdoms. Everyone had their own ambitions. They all wanted to become a dazzling, top-notch genius. They wanted to be valued by the Divine Master and have a meteoric rise. The Great Guardian waved his hand and threw out 8 jade bamboo slips. He messed up the order and divided them into 4 pairs. He picked up the 4 pairs of jade bamboo slips and read aloud, "The 4th round of the examination begins now. The first round, Yin Wuke vs. Kong Mingqi. The second round, Ji Tianqing vs. Qian Feiyang. The third round, Jiang Ningxue vs. Song Zhanyu. The 4th round, Qin Sangqiong vs." After the Great Guardian finished reading, the 8 geniuses frowned with complicated expressions. Yin Wuke was the first to step onto the stage, standing in the middle of the plaza. His opponent, Kong Mingqi, was the number 1 genius of the Lufeng Empire. His strength was the same as his, at the 6th firmament primordial spirit realm. The 2 of them stood still on the ring. After they bowed to each other, they took out their respective magic treasures and began to fight fiercely. Kong Mingqi wore a fiery red armor and held 2 fiery sabers in his hands. He used the extremely violent heavenly fire saber technique and attacked fiercely. Wu Kei was still the same as before. His aura was soft and gentle. Even his cultivation technique was more gentle. Yin and Yang complemented each other, making him unpredictable. However, the Tao of Yin and Yang contained the principles of the heavens, and was the most profound of all. No matter how ferocious Kong Mingqi's attacks were, he could block them with the help of the Yin and Yang umbrella. The 2 of them exchanged more than 100 moves, and Kong Mingqi was unable to gain the upper hand. His mana was greatly depleted, and his momentum was weakened. Yin Wuke was still not in a hurry. He was not anxious at all. He advanced and retreated in an orderly manner, as if he had an endless amount of mana. Such an outcome made everyone feel incredulous. Only Yin Wuke and Ji Tianqing knew that this was the special characteristic of the Yin-Yang limitless technique. Yin and Yang complemented each other, and the mana was inexhaustible. It was because of this that this technique could be called a peerless divine technique. Very quickly, 15 minutes passed. Yin Wuke and Kong Mingqi exchanged a few hundred moves before the victor was finally decided. Kong Mingqi's mana was greatly depleted, and his body was covered in wounds. He was suppressed by Yin Wuke's yin-yang wheel and could no longer resist. After the Great Guardian announced the outcome of the battle, Yin Wuke removed the yin-yang wheel and kept the yin and yang umbrella. He thanked Kong Mingqi and left the ring with a smile on his face. Kong Mingqi crawled up pathetically. He muttered a few words unwillingly before walking down the ring with a gloomy expression. The second battle began. Ji Tianqing went up the ring and stood still in the middle of the ring. Coincidentally, his opponent was Qian Feiyang. Qian Feiyang walked into the ring with a gloomy expression. He stood a few hundred feet away from Ling Xian and said coldly, "Ji Tianqing, I didn't think that we would have to fight again. For the past 3 months, I have been training day and night just to wash away the humiliation from before. I will not be defeated by the same person twice." His tone was full of confidence, and his bright eyes were also full of anticipation. Ji Tianqing glanced at him and said emotionlessly, "Your life has been so rough. I really pity you. 3 months ago, you lost to me. Today, you will lose to me as well. There will be no miracles." Seeing Ji Tianqing acting so frivolous and arrogant, Qian Feiyang felt as if he had been greatly humiliated. His eyes flashed with a cold light as he shouted in a deep voice, "Ji Tianqing, cut the crap. I'll show you my power." As he shouted, a golden light flashed in his hands, and a 2-meter-long golden spear appeared. With the coiling dragon spear in his hand, his entire body exuded a strong fighting spirit. His aura also reached its peak. Outer Sky Dragon. Holding the coiling dragon spear with both hands, he leaped into the sky and stabbed at Ji Tianqing with both hands. Suddenly, a 300-meter-long golden dragon appeared in the sky and swooped down at Ji Tianqing with the power to destroy the world. Back then, when he challenged Ji Tianqing, he had used this spear technique. After 3 months, he used this spear technique again, and its power had increased by 3 times. It was obvious that his diligent training in the past 3 months had produced remarkable results, and his strength had also greatly improved. However, Ji Tianqing still looked calm and said confidently, "When you challenged me, I beat you in 3 moves. Now, I don't need 3 moves. 2 moves are enough." When he finished speaking, the golden dragon that descended from the sky had already swooped down on top of his head. He immediately waved the black dragon sword and unleashed 80% of his strength, slashing out a sword light as fast as lightning. Broken Moon Sword. The 300-meter-long sword light tore through the sky like a waterfall and instantly slashed at the golden dragon. Kaboom! A thunderous sound exploded. The golden dragon collapsed on the spot and exploded into pieces that covered the sky and earth, scattering all over the arena. The terrifying Broken Moon Sword's power did not diminish as it slashed at Qian Feiyang in the distance. Bang! Qian Feiyang sensed that something was wrong and held the coiling dragon spear in front of him to block the sword light. However, he could not withstand the terrifying power and was sent flying with his spear, crashing into the 5-colored light barrier. Pfft! When he landed pathetically, his face was as pale as a sheet and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Ji Tianqing only used 1 move to injure him. No! This is impossible. His eyes were wide open as he roared in disbelief. Meteor Fiery Dragon Spear. He roared and used his strongest killing move without caring about anything else. He turned into a dazzling golden light and merged with the coiling dragon spear as he flew into the sky. Chapter 16:16. The coiling dragon spear fell from the sky like a meteor, dazzling and resplendent. The power contained within seemed to be able to destroy the heavens and earth, penetrating everything. Even the sky could be pierced through by the spear. There was nothing that could block this unstoppable spear. Everyone in the square stared at this scene unblinkingly, their hearts in their mouths. The geniuses thought to themselves that if they were Ji Tianqing, they would also not be able to dodge. They would only be able to block with all their might. However, a scene that shocked everyone appeared. Ji Tianqing faced the coiling dragon spear fearlessly, without any intention of dodging or resisting. He formed a sword seal with his left hand, and his right hand emitted a white light as he slashed at the coiling dragon spear. Cold Sea. With a slash of the sword, the sea turned cold. In that instant, a snow-white sword light that was 100 feet long tore through the sky. The sword light carried a terrifying chill as it slashed at the coiling dragon spear. Kaboom! In an earth-shattering explosion, the coiling dragon spear that was shining with golden light was shattered on the spot, turning into hundreds of fragments that scattered in all directions. Qian Feiyang's Dharma treasure, the coiling dragon spear, was destroyed by Ji Tianqing with a single slash. Among the golden fragments that blotted out the sky, there was a figure that rolled and smashed into a corner of the square. Plop! After that figure landed, he rolled a few times in a sorry state before stopping, but he could not get up no matter what. Everyone's eyes were gathered on that figure. Without a doubt, that person was Qian Feiyang. His hair was disheveled as he lay on the ground, blood gushing out of his nose and mouth. There was also a long and narrow wound on his chest. His body twitched as his eyes opened and closed continuously. He was in a daze and was on the verge of losing consciousness. His physical injuries were not serious. What really made him lose his ability to fight was the injury to his primordial spirit. After 2 moves, Ji Tianqing put away the black dragon sword and no longer attacked. Just as he said, he did not need 3 moves to defeat Qian Feiyang. 2 moves were enough. The crowd was in an uproar. The 8 young geniuses and the 6 divine envoys all had expressions of disbelief as they stared at Ji Tianqing with their mouths agape. No one dared to believe that Ji Tianqing really only used 2 moves to severely injure Qian Feiyang. Such a powerful combat strength was simply terrifying. Previously, when he said that he would defeat Qian Feiyang in 2 moves, everyone secretly criticized him, thinking that he was too confident and arrogant. Now, the truth was right in front of their eyes. Who wouldn't believe it? Jiang Ningxue furrowed her brows with a solemn expression. She thought to herself, this guy hasn't fought for 3 months, and he's already this strong? Song Zhanyu stared at Ji Tianqing with burning eyes and murmured in shock, even Qin Sangqiong might not be able to do that, right? Qin Sangqiong also stared at Ji Tianqing. His eyes were cold and his nerves were tense. A thought flashed through his mind. If there's anyone who can defeat me and take away the honor of being the number 1 genius, that person will definitely be him. He had a strong premonition that Ji Tianqing was his strongest opponent. At this moment, the Great Guardian announced the results loudly. Ji Tianqing wins this battle. As his voice fell, Ji Tianqing turned and walked out of the ring. Several golden armored guards stepped into the arena and carried the unconscious Qian Feiyang off. The assessment continued. Jiang Ningxue and Song Zhanyu entered the arena at the same time. After greeting each other, a fierce battle began. Both of their strengths were on par with each other. The battle was exceptionally intense, but it was hard to tell who would win. Within a short period of time, it was hard to tell who would win. They exchanged more than 1,000 moves and fought for 30 minutes before the outcome was decided. The result was as expected. Jiang Ningxue lost to Song Zhanyu by 1 move. Song Zhanyu left the arena calmly without any joy of winning. After all, this was the result that was expected. Jiang Ningxue looked a little embarrassed and her eyes were dim. She lowered her head and left the arena quietly. She returned to the edge of the square and stood still. She did not even have the courage to look at Ji Tianqing. She recalled the oath that she had made back then and felt her cheeks burning. She could only laugh bitterly at herself. Back then, I even swore that I would defeat Ji Tianqing in the assessment and let him see me in a new light. I would then wash away my shame. I didn't expect that I wouldn't even have the chance to fight with him. Ha ha ha. After a while, the 4th battle began. Qin Sangqiong and a young genius entered the arena. There was no suspense in this battle. The young genius was defeated by Qin Sangqiong after just over 100 moves. The 4th round of the assessment had ended. Ji Tianqing, Qin Sangqiong, Song Zhanyu and Wuk Yin had advanced to the next round and were resting at the edge of the square. Jiang Ningxue, Qian Feiyang, Kong Mingqi and the rest continued to fight for the 5th to 8th place. After 2 rounds of fighting, the results of the ranking were out quickly. Jiang Ningxue was the most powerful among the 4 of them. She had won the 5th place without any suspense and was qualified to participate in the Kingdom Exchange meet. Qian Feiyang was severely injured and unconscious. He could not fight and was ranked 8th. The results of the ranking made the crowd sigh with emotion. 3 months ago, Qian Feiyang was ranked 4th. He would definitely be able to participate in the Kingdom Exchange meet. I didn't expect, sigh. Speaking of which, this guy is really unlucky. His fate is too rough. Yeah. Who asked him to meet Ji Tianqing? He was severely injured and unconscious during the assessment and ended up ranked 8th. Within 3 months, he went from 4th place to 8th place. What a tragedy. A few of the geniuses and God's messengers discussed among themselves and sympathized with Qian Feiyang. Next, the 5th round of the assessment began. Ji Tianqing, Qin Sangxiong and the other 3 were going to fight for the 1st to 4th place. The rules of the assessment had changed. They did not need to draw lots. Each of them had to fight with 3 opponents. The first one to challenge was Wuxia. He looked at Ji Tianqing playfully and turned to the head guardian. The first battle, I would like to challenge Ji Tianqing. The head guardian nodded in agreement and was about to let the 2 of them fight. Unexpectedly, Wuxia added another sentence. However, I choose to admit defeat. The head guardian was stunned for a moment. He did not say anything and announced the result. Next, Wuxia challenged Song Zhanyu. This time, he did not admit defeat. Instead, he used all his strength to fight with Song Zhanyu. The result was obvious. After exchanging more than 200 moves with Song Zhanyu, he finally could not take it anymore. He was severely injured and had to admit defeat. Song Zhanyu did not have it easy either. He had used up a lot of his spiritual energy and his body was covered with wounds. Everyone was shocked by Wuxian's performance. They found it unbelievable. 3 months ago, he was just a passerby among the geniuses. He was ordinary and not many people paid attention to him. Now, he was able to fight with Song Zhanyu. Although he had lost, it was a glorious defeat. For the 3rd battle, he had to challenge Qin Sangxiong. However, he knew his place and chose to admit defeat. The head guardian announced that Wuxia had lost all 3 battles and was ranked 4th. At first, it sounded humiliating to lose all 3 battles. Chapter 16-17. The 4th place had been confirmed. Next, Ji Tianqing, Song Zhanyu, and Qin Sangxiong would fight for the top 3 places. Everyone in the square stared at them intently, looking forward to the final result. Everyone knew that the most exciting fight was about to begin. Ji Tianqing stepped into the colorful light shield and stood still in the fighting ring. He looked calmly at Song Zhanyu and said, "For the sake of fairness, I can give you an hour to adjust your breathing." What he had done was indeed open and aboveboard, which made everyone respect him. Song Zhanyu frowned and said coldly, "Humph. No need, I'm not that useless Qian Feiyang." Having said that, he stepped into the fighting ring. Ji Tianqing was not angry at being rejected. He said calmly, "If that's the case, let's end this quickly. Qin Sangxiong is still waiting for us." Song Zhanyu's eyebrows twitched and the anger in his eyes intensified. "Ji Tianqing. You're too arrogant. Do you think only Qin Sangxiong is worthy of being your opponent? Today, I'll defeat you in front of everyone and crush your arrogance." Ji Tianqing shook his head and said calmly, "No, you're wrong. You and Qin Sangxiong are not worthy of being my opponents." His tone was calm and indifferent, as if he was stating a fact. That was the truth. Only those who were at the crossing Calamity Realm were worthy of being his opponents. He was invincible among those who were below the crossing Calamity Realm. However, Song Zhanyu, Qin Sangxiong, and everyone else were shocked by what he had said. The geniuses and the 6 divine messengers were shocked by his arrogance. Qin Sangxiong frowned and a cold light flashed across his eyes. His body was filled with fighting spirit. Song Zhanyu was furious. He sneered and said, "I don't know how powerful you are. However, your confidence and arrogance are unrivaled. confidence? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and smiled. You can think whatever you want, as long as you're happy. He had an indifferent attitude, completely ignoring Song Zhanyu's opinion and words. However, it was precisely because of this that Song Zhanyu felt disregarded and felt even more ashamed and resentful. Ji Tianqing, you. He pulled out a treasured sword, and a violent aura gushed out from his body as he shouted in a cold tone. However, before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by Ji Tianqing. You talk too much. As his voice rang out, Ji Tianqing had already attacked with lightning speed. Swish. He used the divine concealment step and instantly disappeared into the sky. In the next moment, he appeared above Song Zhanyu's head and slashed down with his sword. Heaven-cleaving sword. The black dragon sword emitted a dazzling golden light, condensing into an incomparably sharp golden sword, slashing down like a bolt of lightning. Song Zhanyu's expression changed, and he immediately brandished his sword to block the attack, slashing out a dozen huge sword lights. Clang! 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 In a series of collision sounds, the dozen sword lights were shattered and exploded. Song Zhanyu was also knocked back hundreds of meters, and his feet drew 2 deep trenches in the ground. His face was pale, and his arms were numb. The treasured sword in his hand was also trembling non-stop, letting out a mournful cry. Damn it! How can you be so powerful? He cursed in a low voice and immediately unleashed his full power, swinging his sword and using his trump card. Sword dance in the sky. Suddenly, his body lit up with a white light that shot into the sky. He merged with his treasured sword and flew into the sky. The 30-meter-tall giant sword spun rapidly like a tornado, bursting out thousands of sword lights. Swish! 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 The sharp sword lights rained down like a rain of arrows, attacking Ji Tianqing. Within the 5-colored light barrier, the area within a radius of 2,000 meters was filled with thousands of sword lights, leaving no place to hide. However, Ji Tianqing did not dodge. He held the black dragon's sword with both hands and slashed at the hurricane formed by the sword lights. Broken Moon Sword. The black dragon's sword burst out with a dazzling golden light, condensing into a giant sword that was hundreds of meters long. It shattered countless sword lights along the way and slashed at the sword hurricane. No matter how exquisite Song Zhanyu's sword technique was, no matter how fancy and pleasing to the eye it looked, Ji Tianqing had only used one sword to break it, and his strength was enough to defeat 10. Kaboom! With a thunderous explosion, the dazzling sword hurricane was shattered on the spot by the golden sword. Hundreds of millions of sword light fragments fell like goose feathers, sprinkling on the ruined arena. Song Zhanyu's figure flew backward, slamming into the 5-colored light barrier, and fell into the ruins. When he landed, his hair was messy, his black robe was tattered, and blood was gushing out of his nose and mouth. On his chest, there was a sword wound that was so deep that his bones could be seen. Obviously, the black dragon's sword had broken through the defense of the armor he was wearing, and a crack had appeared on it. Pfft! Song Zhanyu opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked at Ji Tianqing with misty eyes and roared in a low voice, "You! I won't lose. Never!" Full of anger and indignation, he burst out with infinite potential, burning with golden flames all over his body. He rushed into the sky again, waved his sword with both hands, and used his ultimate skill to attack Ji Tianqing. Ultimate Tyrannical Sovereign Sword. He roared and used all his power to condense a 5-colored giant sword that was hundreds of meters long, and slashed at Ji Tianqing. This sword was extremely domineering and powerful to the extreme. This was his strongest sword, unstoppable. Ji Tianqing was still expressionless. With his left hand behind his back, he waved the black dragon's sword with his right hand and slashed out a dazzling sword light. Swing! A white sword light that was hundreds of meters long, like a crescent moon, appeared in the sky and swept toward Song Zhanyu. Bang! The 2 sword lights collided with a loud bang that shook the sky and spread throughout the peak of Mount Godseal. The five-colored giant sword collapsed on the spot, exploding into dazzling lights that filled the entire arena. The dazzling white crescent sword light did not lose its power and slashed at Song Jianyu. He was sent flying, and a hideous wound appeared on his chest. Blood splattered everywhere. Then, he crashed into the five-colored light barrier and fell to the ground. When he stood up from the ruins, his hair was disheveled, and his body was covered in blood. He was in a sorry state. Before he could regain his composure, a pitch-black, ice-cold sword was placed against his neck. You are indeed stronger than Qian Feiyang. He only lasted 2 moves, but you lasted until the third. A calm and indifferent voice sounded beside him. As soon as he raised his head, he saw Ji Tianqing's calm face looking down at him from above. Without a doubt, he had lost. Ji Tianqing's words sounded like a compliment. But he only felt shame and anger in his heart. At this moment, the dust on the arena had dispersed, and everything returned to normal. When the crowd saw what had happened in the arena, they were stunned and could not believe their eyes. Ji Tianqing and Song Jianyu had only exchanged 3 moves, and Song Jianyu was severely injured and defeated. This was unbelievable. Song Jianyu was the second genius after Qin Sangxiong. At this thought, the crowd could not help but have a thought. Could Qin Sangxiong defeat Ji Tianqing? Chapter 16-18. When this thought appeared in everyone's mind, they realized that there was a problem. Ji Tianqing had created a series of miracles. Unknowingly, he had left an impression on everyone that he was invincible. In the past, no one had thought that he could be compared to Qin Sangxiong. But now, he seemed to have surpassed Qin Sangxiong. Everyone had always thought that Qin Sangxiong was the #1 genius. However, for the past 6 months, no one had seen Qin Sangxiong fight. On the other hand, Ji Tianqing had fought a few times, and each time, he was more powerful than the last. His strength was unbelievable. After comparing the two of them, everyone felt that Ji Tianqing was more powerful. Of course, since the two of them had not really fought, no one could be sure of the result. Everyone was looking forward to seeing Qin Sangxiong fight with Ji Tianqing. Qin Sangxiong finally stepped into the fighting ring as everyone looked at him with anticipation. He was wearing a gray linen shirt and a pair of black cloth shoes. He held the Sangxiong's sword in his arms and stood proudly in the middle of the fighting ring. Everyone thought that he would challenge Ji Tianqing and have a fight with Ji Tianqing. However, to everyone's surprise, he looked at Song Jianyu calmly and asked, "Song Jianyu, can you still hold on?" He had challenged Song Jianyu first. Song Jianyu also did not expect this result. He was stunned on the spot, and his expression became very ugly. His eyes surged with anger. Damn it! Previously, Yin Wuke challenged me. Then, Ji Tianqing challenged me. Now that I am severely injured, even Qin Sangxiong wants to challenge me. If he accepted Qin Sangxiong's challenge, he would have to fight 3 rounds in a row and he would not be able to take a breather. His powers were depleted and he was severely injured. If he were to fight with Qin Sangxiong, he would definitely lose. If he did not accept Qin Sangxiong's challenge, he would be giving up and losing face. At that moment, he was in a dilemma as he weighed the pros and cons in silence. The few guardians, divine messengers and geniuses were waiting quietly. No one objected to Qin Sangxiong's decision and they understood what he meant. He clearly wanted to exclude Song Jianyu and compete with Ji Tianqing for the honor of being the #1 genius. Everyone's eyes were bright. Of course, they could tell that Song Jianyu was weaker than Ji Tianqing and Qin Sangxiong. He could only be ranked 3rd. This was the truth. No matter how angry and unwilling Song Jianyu was, it could not be changed. 10 breaths of time passed. After careful consideration, Song Jianyu finally decided to forfeit and admit defeat. I admit defeat. He lowered his head, expressionless, and said these 3 words in a low voice. Everyone in the square had long expected this result and did not feel surprised. Although Song Jianyu directly admitted defeat, which was slightly incompetent and humiliating. But this was the wisest course of action. Even if he endured his injuries and fought with Qin Sangxiong, he would still lose in the end and his injuries would be even worse. The Great Guardian announced the result loudly: Qin Sangxiong wins this battle. Song Zhanyu was ranked third. In the last round, Ji Tianqing will fight against Qin Sangxiong for the first place. As his majestic voice fell, Ji Tianqing stepped into the colorful light shield. He looked calm as he walked to the middle of the arena and stopped 100 feet away from Qin Sangxiong. The two of them faced each other in the arena. Vast amounts of energy were accumulating in their bodies and they were filled with a strong fighting spirit. Ji Tianqing, I have been waiting for this day for half a year. Qin Sangxiong held the Sangxiong saber in his arms and looked sharply at Ji Tianqing. He said in a serious tone, "Before I met you, I looked down on the geniuses from various countries and no one was worthy of my attention. It was only when you appeared that my fighting spirit and fighting spirit were ignited. Today, you and I will have a duel at the peak of God Bestowment Mountain, in front of everyone here, and we will decide who is stronger." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows as the corners of his mouth curled into a playful smile. "You think quite highly of me. Unfortunately, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed." "What do you mean?" Qin Sangxiong frowned and his eyes turned cold. The smile on Ji Tianqing's face grew more and more playful. He said meaningfully, "You see me as your number one enemy, but I don't. I am just wondering how many moves you can take from my sword." Qin Sangxiong frowned and his cheeks twitched. He said coldly, "Ji Tianqing, I admit that you are strong. However, you are too arrogant and you do not know your place." Ji Tianqing smiled and said calmly, "I am just stating a fact. You think I am arrogant because you are ignorant." Qin Sangxiong's eyes were filled with coldness. He slowly drew out the Sangxiong saber and his body lit up with dazzling flames. "Ji Tianqing, if you are trying to provoke me with such an inferior method, you have underestimated me." In his opinion, Ji Tianqing was deliberately provoking him so that he would not be able to unleash his strongest combat strength. However, Ji Tianqing did not want to talk nonsense with him. He said firmly, "You will definitely lose within 10 moves." "Arrogant!" Qin Sangxiong shouted and jumped into the sky. He held the Sangxiong saber with both hands and slashed down. Sky-splitting feather saber. The pitch-black Sangxiong saber gave off a dazzling golden light and slashed out 49 rays of saber radiance that were 100 feet long. Each ray of golden saber radiance contained a powerful force that could destroy everything. It was more dazzling than the sun. The 49 rays of saber radiance were arranged according to a special pattern and formed a mysterious saber array. It activated the power of heaven and earth and slashed down on Ji Tianqing from the sky. Suddenly, the entire arena was sealed by the saber radiance. The invisible divine power of 10,000 miles of heaven and earth firmly suppressed Ji Tianqing, making it impossible for him to escape. At this moment, Qin Sangxiong's body was majestic. He gave off a holy and majestic aura as if he was the god of war. When the Great Guardian, Hong Qingtian, and a few divine messengers saw this, they were shocked and started to whisper to each other. "It is the heavenly saber. Qin Sangxiong has indeed mastered this tribulation secret skill. Qin Sangxiong is indeed the top genius. With the strength of the primordial soul realm, he managed to master this saber skill in just 1 month. This is unbelievable. I did not expect him to use the heavenly saber in his first move. It seems like he really sees Ji Tianqing as his number one opponent. Qin Sangxiong's saber skill has reached the small completion realm. It is very powerful. Ji Tianqing is in trouble." Everyone was staring at the arena and they were eager to see how Ji Tianqing would get out of this predicament. To everyone's surprise, Ji Tianqing looked calm as if he did not feel threatened at all. Not only did he not dodge or block, but he also took out the black dragon sword and attacked directly. "Draw your sword," he shouted. Golden light surged out of his body and he pulled out the black dragon sword. The sword radiance flashed. A giant golden sword that was 100 feet long exploded with a destructive force and slashed toward Qin Sanxiong in the sky. Bang! 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 The giant golden sword collided with the dozen rays of saber radiance. The entire arena had turned into a world of golden light. Chapter 1619. After a long while, the golden radiance that covered the sky finally dissipated. The 49 golden saber radiance and the giant golden sword had all collapsed. Ji Tianqing and Qin Sanxiong had fought each other head-on. They were evenly matched and neither of them had gained the upper hand. Qin Sanxiong stood in the sky and looked down at Ji Tianqing with a cold smile. "You are just a so-so. I have overestimated you." Ji Tianqing glanced at him and said calmly, "It was just the first move. I only used 70% of my strength." Qin Sanxiong frowned and the veins on his forehead bulged. He looked terrible. "Humph. Even so, you will not be able to defeat me in 10 moves. I will never be defeated by you. I will be the #1 genius." He shouted angrily and swung his firmament saber for the second time with all his strength. 7 suns dazzling firmament. The firmament saber emitted a dazzling flame that covered the sky. 7 giant sabers that were hundreds of feet long appeared from the flame and slashed toward Ji Tianqing in a crisscross pattern. The 7 giant sabers were arranged in the position of the 7 stars. They contained the mysteries of the stars and attracted the power of the stars. They were more dazzling than the sun. Kill! Following Qin Sanxiong's furious roar, 7 giant flaming blades slashed down and shrouded Ji Tianqing's figure. Ji Tianqing was fearless. He flew up into the sky and swung his black dragon sword to counter the attack. 7 stars sword. He swung his black dragon sword and slashed out 7 giant golden swords. Each golden sword radiance was surrounded by dazzling purple thunderbolts. They were extremely powerful. Bang! 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 The 7 sword radiance and the 7 saber radiance collided and created a deafening sound. Once again, the flame and the golden light shards filled the entire light shield and turned the arena into a chaotic area. The saber radiance and the sword radiance collapsed at the same time. Both of them were hit by the raging shockwave. Qin Sanxiong flew backward for thousands of feet and crashed into the 5-colored light shield. He fell to the ground with a pale face and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Ji Tianqing retreated 1,000 feet away. Then, he stopped and stood firmly in the sky. His expression was normal, and his aura was still stable. It was obvious that Qin Sanxiong was at a disadvantage in the second exchange and his internal organs were injured. Ji Tianqing's physical defense was even stronger. He blocked the power of the shockwave and remained unscathed. The protectors, god envoys, and geniuses shuddered upon seeing this. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Oh my god! Ji Tianqing is actually unscathed? Qin Sanxiong is injured? They have only exchanged 2 moves. Ji Tianqing's strength is actually so strong. Although Qin Sanxiong is only slightly injured, his strength is obviously not as good as Ji Tianqing's. I'm afraid the situation is not optimistic. Just as the crowd was discussing this, another fierce fight broke out in the arena. Ji Tianqing took the initiative to attack. He held the black dragon sword with both hands and slashed at Qin Sanxiong. Broken Moon Sword. He exerted all his strength and slashed out a 2,000 feet long giant golden sword. Along with the raging holy thunder, the sword slashed toward Qin Sanxiong. The sword slashed across the sky and dazzled with golden light and thunder. Its power was so terrifying that it seemed to be able to tear the sky and cut the sun and moon in half. Without the protection of the 5-colored light shield, the entire Mount God bestowment would have been slashed apart by the sword. Qin Sanxiong frowned and his eyes became extremely solemn. He felt the threat of death and had to fight with all his strength and caution. fantasy space-shattering blade. He shouted angrily. He held the Sangxiong's sword with both hands and slashed out a 1,000-meter-long giant golden blade toward Ji Tianqing. This was only the third exchange of blows between the two. For his dignity, he could only choose to fight head-on. He could not dodge or block the attack. The pride of a genius made him unable to admit that he was not as good as Ji Tianqing. Kaboom! The saber radiance and the sword radiance collided and exploded with a thunderous sound. Suddenly, the loud sound echoed throughout the peak of Mount God Bestowment. The terrifying shockwave shook the entire mountain. The five-colored light shield also shook violently and rippled. The saber radiance and the sword radiance shattered at the same time and turned into billions of golden light shards. They hit the ground and the five-colored light shield. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky unscathed and was pushed back 200 steps by the shock wave. Qin Sangxiong was sent flying again. He crashed into the five-colored light shield and fell to the edge of the square. When he got up from the ground, his hair was disheveled and his face was as pale as a sheet. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered. The primordial spirit in his body fluctuated violently and became very disordered. What was worse was that his long robe and hair were charred and tattered by the thunder. Black smoke kept coming out of his head. A strong sense of defeat and humiliation surged into his heart, causing his entire body to tremble, and his eyes to be filled with a layer of blood. Ji Tianqing! You are indeed the son of the oracle. No matter how angry and humiliated Qin Sangxiong was, he had to admit that Ji Tianqing was really powerful. From the start of their fight until now, it had always been an open and above-board confrontation. He could not defeat Ji Tianqing and was severely injured. However, he accepted it wholeheartedly and had no complaints. At the edge of the square, the guardians, messengers and geniuses were shocked and could not believe what they had seen. Qin Sangxiong is injured again? How can he be so severely injured? This is unbelievable. Ji Tianqing is unscathed but Qin Sangxiong is severely injured? It seems like there is no suspense in the outcome. Qin Sangxiong is definitely going to lose. I did not expect Ji Tianqing to grow so quickly. Half a year ago, he was only at LV5 Primordial Spirit Realm. Now, he is already at LV7 Primordial Spirit Realm. Within half a year, he has risen by 2 cultivation realms. This speed is really shocking and unprecedented. In terms of suspense, Qin Sangxiong is most likely going to lose. Now, I am only concerned about whether he can withstand 10 moves. That's right. Although Ji Tianqing is arrogant, everything he said has come true. Previously, when he said that he could defeat Qin Sangxiong within 10 moves, everyone thought that he was too arrogant. Now, I believe him. Just as the crowd was discussing, Ji Tianqing, who was in the ring, spoke. He looked at Qin Sangxiong and said calmly, "The outcome has been decided. You should admit defeat." Qin Sangxiong was stunned for a moment before he burst out laughing. Ha 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 ha. Ji Tianqing, you are so arrogant that I am speechless. However, don't even think about it. No matter how weak I am, I will not be defeated within 10 moves and I will not admit defeat. His loud and clear laughter contained a strong sense of desolation and unyieldingness. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said calmly, "So what if you can withstand 10 moves? By then, your injuries will be more serious and it will affect the future kingdom's exchange. Why do you have to do this?" As soon as he said this, the 2 guardians and the 6 divine envoys all nodded in agreement. No matter who won first place, Ji Tianqing or Qin Sangxiong, they could accept it. What they were most concerned about was the upcoming exchange between the 3 divine kingdoms. Chapter 1620. The Great Guardian, Hong Qingtian, and the 6 divine messengers felt that there was no need to continue the fight. The situation was clear. Qin Sangxiong was no match for Ji Tianqing. There was no point in continuing the fight as it would not change the outcome. Instead, it would worsen Qin Sangxiong's injuries. If it affected the upcoming kingdom exchange meet, it would be a loss for the vast kingdom. Many geniuses understood this. However, how could Qin Sanxiong admit defeat? He flipped his left hand and took out a wine gourd. He tilted his head back and gulped down a few mouthfuls of wine. The wine that flowed out of the 1,000-drunken gourd was light yellow in color, and it exuded a strong and violent spiritual qi. After 3 mouthfuls of wine, Qin Sanxiong put away the 1,000-drunken gourd. His face was flushed and his eyes were blurred. The spiritual qi in his body surged and the wine turned into a violent spiritual power that flowed through his body. Soon after, his skin turned red and a faint golden light shone from the top of his head. His injuries were healing rapidly and his combat strength was increasing rapidly. Ji Tianqing. Do you think you've won? Impossible. Now, I'll show you my real trump card. Qin Sanxiong wiped the wine off the corner of his mouth with his sleeve. He formed a spiritual art with his left hand and held the firmament saber with his right hand. Swoosh. 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 His body became blurry and illusory. He merged with the firmament saber and disappeared. Drunken dance of 1,000 illusions, shattering the firmament saber. Qin Sanxiong's voice was heard from the golden firmament saber that covered the sky. It was powerful and domineering. In the next moment, tens of thousands of sharp golden firmament sabers formed a tight formation and fell from the sky. The entire fighting ring turned into a world of golden light. Ji Tianqing's body was instantly drowned in the golden light. Seeing this, the great guardian, Hong Qingtian, and the rest of the geniuses were shocked. What saber skill is this? It looks like the firmament saber, but it doesn't look like it. I get it now. This is indeed the firmament saber secret skill. However, Qin Sanxiong has added his own understanding and changed it. Is that so? This is incredible. Qin Sanxiong could master a tribulation-level mystic technique within a month. He could even add his own insights into it and improve it. He's a genius that only appears once in 100 years. To be fair, Qin Sanxiong is indeed one of the top geniuses in the past 100 years. Unfortunately, his luck was not good. He actually met Ji Tianqing, this monster. Just as the crowd was discussing, Ji Tianqing, who was in the ring, began his counterattack. Heaven-splitting sword. He gripped the black dragon's sword with both hands as his entire body radiated with dazzling golden light. He slashed out a massive sword over 10,000 feet in length with an invincible stance. The giant dark golden sword was surrounded by dense bolts of divine lightning, and it exploded with a power that could destroy the heavens and earth. Boom, boom, boom. Amidst the deafening noise, the giant golden sword shattered the countless saber lights as if they were dried twigs. The great array formed by tens of thousands of light blades was actually shattered by the giant sword. It collapsed into billions of pieces and scattered in the sky. Qin Sanxiong, who had disappeared, was forced to reveal his original form. He was hit by the giant sword and flew out with blood gushing out of his body. Bam! He crashed into the colorful light shield at the corner of the square and fell to the ground. He rolled a few times before coming to a stop. Then, the golden light shards that covered the sky and covered the earth fell to the ground and dissipated. Qin Sanxiong's modified Heavenly Blade ultimate skill still could not hurt Ji Tianqing. Instead, it was defeated by him. He was completely defeated. He lay on the ground, twitching. Blood gushed out of his body like a fountain and dyed his clothes and hair. His left arm was almost chopped off. There was a long and narrow wound on his chest and abdomen. It was so deep that his bones could be seen. His primordial spirit, in particular, was severely injured and his consciousness was somewhat muddled. Ji Tianqing held the black dragon sword in his hand and stood in the sky calmly. He did not continue to attack. Qin Sanxiong, stop resisting stubbornly. It's meaningless. The great guardian, Hong Qingtian, and a few divine messengers also tried to persuade him. Qin Sanxiong, you are severely injured. Don't force yourself. Just admit defeat. No matter who gets first place, you will have to participate in the Holy Kingdom exchange meet soon and win glory for the vast Holy Kingdom. Qin Sanxiong, if you continue to be stubborn, your injuries will only worsen. You will not be able to recover in 3 to 5 months. By then, it will affect the Holy Kingdom exchange meet. A real genius will not care about temporary gains and losses. Qin Sanxiong, you have to look further. The exchange meet between the 3 holy kingdoms is the best opportunity to make a name for yourself. Everyone tried to persuade Qin Sanxiong to stop his meaningless resistance. However, he ignored everyone's persuasion. He supported himself with the heavenly blade and staggered to his feet. He wiped the blood off his face with his sleeve and looked at Ji Tianqing with determination. He said in a hoarse and low voice, "Ji Tianqing. As a martial artist, we must not only be arrogant, but we must also be unyielding. Even if I am not as skilled as you and will definitely be defeated by your sword, I will survive 10 moves." Qin Sanxiong put his left hand behind his back and raised the heavenly blade with his right hand. He pointed it at Ji Tianqing and shouted in a deep voice, "Bring it on. Let me see how you are going to defeat me in 10 moves." As soon as he finished speaking, his entire body lit up with a dazzling golden light. It condensed into a dark golden shield that protected him. Apparently, he had made up his mind to not fight Ji Tianqing head-on. He would defend himself with all his might and survive 10 moves no matter what. Even if he knew that he would lose with dignity. Ji Tianqing took a deep look at him and said with a calm tone, "Although you're stubborn, you're not as annoying as I thought. Since you insist on fighting, I will fulfill your wish." As he spoke, he held the black dragon sword in his right hand and performed a unique sword skill with all his might. The 5th move, Black Dragon Shines. He activated a vast amount of spiritual power and poured it into the black dragon sword. He then slashed at Qin Sanxiong. At that moment, the black dragon sword flew out of his hand and turned into a huge black sword that was thousands of feet long. It fell from the sky and slashed at Qin Sanxiong. A vast and holy aura that could suppress the heavens and the earth burst out from the black dragon sword and suppressed Qin Sanxiong. Qin Sanxiong felt the terrifying suppressive force and his face turned pale. At the critical moment, he held the heavenly blade with both hands and slashed out 4 huge light blades to block the sky above his head. Bam! 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 In the blink of an eye, the giant pitch-black sword that was thousands of feet long shattered the 4 light blades. Next, the huge sword shone brightly and let out a dragon's roar that shook the 9 heavens. Roar! Following the dragon's roar, the huge black sword shook its body and turned into a majestic black dragon that was thousands of feet long. The majestic black dragon was covered with dragon scales and shone with a cold light. It stared at Qin Sanxiong and stretched out 2 huge dragon claws to attack him from the sky. Kaboom! You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.